be on the heavy side as they zip through across parts of Scotland. Plenty of showers developing through the afternoon, especially across Northern Ireland, and some scattered across northern England. In the sunny spells across the east, temperatures getting into the 20s, maybe even the mid-20s in and around the capital. We'll see more heavy showers developing through the afternoon and into the evening across parts of Scotland, so becoming more widespread here, some developing across to the northeast. So if you're travelling this Friday evening, just bear in mind, particularly across Scotland, Northern Ireland and the far north of England, you're going to catch these heavy downpours. 1 minute it's dry, the next minute you've got a lot of spray and surface water on the roads. The showers are much more scattered further south, but there will be some for Wales, the Midlands, maybe the odd one for southwest England too. But as I mentioned, from East Anglia down to the southeast, most places staying dry through the afternoon and into the evening. As we go through the evening, the showers further north will also tend to fade away. So for many places, it will be a dry night. The winds will ease a little bit across Scotland and Northern Ireland too. We'll see a few more showers developing into southwest Scotland by the end of the night. But for many, clear skies, a little cooler than quite a few recent nights as well. On to the weekend, and Saturday again a mixture of sunshine and showers. The main focus for showers likely to be northwest England initially, southern Scotland, but we'll see some heavier showers developing across Wales and perhaps into the Midlands, possibly the odd rumble of thunder along with northeast England. A drier day for Scotland and Northern Ireland, and again mostly fine across East Anglia and the southeast. Bye for now.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Don't miss your chance to win our Super Summer Giveaway. With your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date. Which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
We'll be there.
This is GB News.
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
it's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan.
GB News royalty with
Your perfect start to the weekend.
Lucky Us.
Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions.
That raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return.
And a few surprises along the way.
Might be cold in this studio.
That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
A very good afternoon to you. It's 3 p.m. I'm Martin Daubney. Today, I'm in Westminster. Very busy news day, both here and in Paris.
We are just a few hours away now from the opening ceremony here in Paris, but as travel chaos takes hold back home, the big question is, will the Brits be able to get over to support Team GB?
Fantastic stuff. We'll have loads from Sophie throughout the show, and in a short while we'll cross to Manchester, where Mayor Andy Burnham is giving a live statement following the Manchester airport incident that saw 1 officer suspended and 3 others injured. And meanwhile, the Chancellor Rachel Reeves is expected to unveil a £20 billion black hole in the public finances, claiming the Tories left public finances in chaos. With Keir Starmer ruling out austerity, that can surely only mean one thing: tax rises. And what will it mean for the pounds and the pence in your pocket? And in a shocking new report, it claims unchecked greed by petrol companies has driven a pump price lottery. Some forecasts are charging a staggering 30p per litre over the odds, meaning motorists have been fleeced by a staggering £1.6 billion. I'll be joined by the man who wants to put the brakes on this revved-up rip-off. And that's all coming up in your next hour. Welcome to the show. Absolute chaos in Paris. The Olympics has le curse. It's all going wrong for them. Also in a short while, we'll cross to Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester. He's been a cool, calm head in the situation around Manchester Airport, saying it's not clear-cut and urging people not to use this incident for political gain or means. This is your show. Please get in touch. gbnews.com/your say. But now let's do your headlines with Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you very much, and good afternoon to you. It's exactly 2 minutes past 3, and the top story, as we were hearing there, Eurostar is advising travellers to cancel trips to Paris today, if they can. That's after a series of arson attacks just hours before tonight's Olympics opening ceremony. The Prime Minister is urging people to take note of those warnings, with 1 in 4 services expected to be axed. It's after fires were started near at least 3 French train lines today. The state-owned SNCF says its services were the victim of what it's called a massive attack, which they say was aimed at paralysing the network. The company's warning that the situation could last all weekend while repairs are conducted. The family at the centre of a video that appears to show a Greater Manchester police officer kicking a suspect in the head are appealing for calm.
Justice, no peace, no racist police.
Well, as you can see there, hundreds of people were protesting outside Mayor Andy Burnham's office, accusing Greater Manchester Police of racism. It's after 3 officers were seriously injured as they attended to reports of an assault in the Manchester Airport car park, which happened before the event seen in this video. That included a female officer who suffered a broken nose. 4 men were arrested on suspicion of assault and affray, and the police watchdog has launched an investigation. Retired Scotland Yard detective Mike Neville told GB News that those speculating online and in the media are not helping the situation.
Just whips up a storm. It isn't good enough to say things like that. If we're going to come out with comments like that, let's have some facts and evidence. And this is where we could have facts and evidence, because that, as an airport, it's covered by CCTV. It could take months, to review all that footage. But the facts are they could do the main bits of it within a number of days. My expertise was dealing with CCTV. So if you get the key pieces of footage, really, you could have the most of it dealt with within a few days. And this is what it needs to be doing to stop all this speculation and trouble.
To politics, and Mel Stride has become the 4th Conservative MP to now enter the race to become the party's next leader. The Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary joins James Cleverly, Tom Tugendhat and Robert Jenrick in the contest to take over from Rishi Sunak. He says the Tories should avoid veering too far to the right and instead focus on unity.
Also got to go deeper into the centre ground. We've got to become that party that has a broad appeal for competency in government, that channels aspiration, opportunity, all of the things that conservatism has traditionally been about, and for which there will always be a strong appetite amongst people if we can get the right platform together. And I believe that I am the leader that can bring us together as a party to fashion a unified programme that can appeal broadly. That will take time and a huge amount of work, but I believe I've shown in my track record that that's just the sort of thing that I can do.
The regulator that oversees NHS care services in England is not fit for purpose. That's according to the Health Secretary. An independent review into the Care Quality Commission has revealed significant internal failings, which are affecting its ability to monitor health and social care institutions. The CQC inspects around 90,000 services, including hospitals, GP practices, care homes and dental surgeries. The regulator says it accepts the findings, but Wes Streeting told GB News he's stunned.
There are, cases of hospitals not being inspected for over a decade, a care provider that hadn't been inspected since 2015, and even the ratings that are published and that we use as the public to make choices about where to receive health or care, some of those are frankly bogus because of the way in which they've been put together based on either partial inspections or piecing together more recent inspections with historic verdicts on those health and care providers.
In Australia, doctors are working to reattach a surfer's leg after he was attacked by a shark. Kai McKenzie, who's 23, was surfing near Port Macquarie on Tuesday morning. That's about 250 miles from Sydney, when he was bitten by a 3-metre-long great white shark. He managed to catch a wave to shore, where an off-duty police officer helped stem the bleeding. In an extraordinary twist, his severed leg later washed ashore and was put on ice by quick-thinking locals. Doctors are now working to see whether it can be reattached. And in the US, first TV ad for Kamala Harris's presidential bid has just hit the screens.
We choose freedom.
Well, featuring that soundtrack by Beyoncé, who's given her blessing to the Vice President, the ad touches on gun violence, healthcare and abortion, while casting Donald Trump as a convicted criminal. It comes after Miss Harris was endorsed by Barack Obama and Michelle Obama earlier today. They said that they would do everything to put her in the White House. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam. Now, there's only one place to start today, and that's with the absolute chaos in France on the day that the Olympic Games are officially opening. The Olympics are under attack, with the French high-speed rail network left paralysed following a series of coordinated arson attacks. What's been described as coordinated sabotage, signals along tracks were set on fire and cables were cut and then set alight. Chaos over that side of the channel. I'm joined now by our Homeland Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, the Olympics already felt like it had the curse. This is their worst nightmare. Total chaos, and it seems to be orchestrated and targeted. Tell us more.
Well, there's no doubt that the French authorities who are investigating this say there is a sophistication here and a highly coordinated series of attacks that were aimed at causing maximum damage to those rail services. The Transport Minister for France has been speaking on French television on the TF1 channel, and he has confirmed that those investigators have found a number of incendiary devices. There is no indication as to whether these are spent devices that have already ignited and caused damage, or whether these were other ones waiting to go off. But in addition to the signal boxes and signal junctions that were targeted by incendiary devices, we know that cables were also cut, all designed to prevent the use of those rail lines by trains. So the rail lines themselves were not damaged, but when you take away the signalling services, the electronic services that allow the authorities to be able to coordinate the trains along those tracks, then clearly the trains can't run on those tracks until they're fixed. It is causing huge disruption. 800,000 rail passengers who were intending to use those services either delayed or cancelled. And we can tell you that the British Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, is among those impacted. He was planning to take the train to Paris for tonight's opening ceremony, and instead he has now taken a flight out to Paris instead, Martin.
Do we have any idea at this stage, Mark, who may be responsible? There was speculation. In fact, the sports minister said earlier on herself, maybe it was the Russians, but we know there is a lot of internal tensions in France at the moment. The hard left, the anti-capitalists have got wind in their sails because of recent election victories. Any idea yet, Mark White, who may be behind this?
I think because of the level of sophistication here and the use effectively of firebombs, top of the list will be Russia, because we've had the French president just in recent months actually publicly warning that they believed that Russia was intent on disrupting those games. Of course, Russian athletes will not be able to compete in those games. They are banned under the Russian flag. Some are competing on an individual level, but the Russian state is banned from participation in the Olympics. So the French president was very clear. And indeed, just in recent weeks, the French government have said and accused the Kremlin of being involved in a massive campaign of disinformation online and on social media to up the ante, if you like, to suggest that there were very significant concerns about the security arrangements around the Olympics in Paris. So there's no doubt, I think, authorities will be looking at Russia as a potential for the disruption that has been caused here, just because I think of not the fact that the French government were warning about that, but because there was such sophistication that was involved in these coordinated attacks.
Thank you, Mark White. Of course, this all adds to the sense of menace. 40,000 security guards, as many as 10,000 soldiers on the streets of Paris. Mark White, thank you very much for joining us on the show. Excellent as ever. So how is all of this affecting Brits who are attempting to get to the continent? Well, our reporter Adam Cherry is at St Pancras Station, which is where the Eurostar trains, of course, depart from. Adam, bedlam for tourists, many of whom are being asked not to travel. But who would choose not to travel? Are services getting back to anything approaching normal, Adam? How's this affecting Brits trying to make Paris?
It's not looking great, Martin, I'm afraid. The 3:30 train is cancelled. There are some slower conventional trains which are operational. It's sort of a lottery whether you can get on one of those when there's a bottleneck like this. Obviously, lots of people lose out. I've been speaking to people all day today. Some have been hopeful that they'll be able to make new arrangements, and the queue inside the terminal itself to the help desk is absolutely massive. But unfortunately, I just spoke to one woman who said that her train will now leave tomorrow morning. So she's going to miss the opening ceremony entirely. And another chap must be the most unlucky man on the planet, because he had his plane cancelled, so he came here as a backup. So I won't go gambling with him anytime soon, unfortunately. And it's still people arriving in their droves, but a lot of them are basically just standing around with their suitcases, I'm afraid.
OK, thank you there, Adam Cherry. We'll come back to you later in the show for more information as it comes. Now, let's bring you some breaking news now. And it concerns the police officer who kicked a man in the head at Manchester Airport on Tuesday. The Independent Office for Police Conduct has advised the police constable that he is being criminally investigated over the force used during the incident. The Greater Manchester police officer is now under criminal investigation for assault. The IOPC is arranging to interview the officer under criminal caution as soon as possible. Just to repeat that, if you're tuning in, the police officer involved in that incident in Manchester Airport has been advised the police constable is now being criminally investigated over the force used during that incident. He's now being under criminal investigation for assault and will soon be interviewed under a caution as soon as possible. And we'll also hear live from the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, very shortly, right here on GB News. Let's get more now on the Olympic Games, which should officially open later today. Well, we think so. Let's cross to Paris now, speak with our reporter, Sophie Reaper. Sophie, everything that could have gone wrong with these Olympics so far seems to have gone wrong. What's the mood on the ground? Are the fans still positive?
Well, Martin, this is absolutely the last set of circumstances that the French Olympic Committee would have wanted themselves in. Obviously, they already knew it was a huge risk making that decision to have the first ever outdoor opening ceremony. We know that in just a few hours' time now that will commence on the Seine here in Paris. This is the first time it's ever been done. So there was already that trepidation that they'd made that call to do so. And this happening today is just going to set people's nerves. Yeah. If possible, even further on edge. So it's not an ideal situation. Right now, there aren't actually many fans around us. I think if they've had any sense, they've already moved down to the Seine, which we'll be doing in a very short period amount of time. Sorry, the police are just opening the gates next to us, you can hear that. That is one thing to point out, is that the police presence here is absolutely massive. You'll see the Arc de Triomphe behind me. Who has ever seen the Arc de Triomphe this empty of people and tourists before? Well, that is the scale of the Olympic Games. They've closed that down. We've been seeing various delegations from different countries being escorted via motorcade through the Arc de Triomphe. We've also seen coaches carrying the athletes to the start of the Olympic opening ceremony at Austerlitz Bridge, about 6 kilometres downstream on the Seine. But the security is so tight. And I have to say, who can blame them? Look at the chaos that is already taking place, already affecting Brits even across the Channel from getting over to Paris for the opening ceremony, for the events that are taking place over the coming days. So this really isn't an ideal set of circumstances, and I think they would have been hoping that this could have gone off without a hitch. They were hoping to make history, the first ever outdoor open ceremony, and now there's already a taint to that moment of history. So I'm sure the French Olympic Committee will be disappointed, but they'll be trying to make up for it. Plenty of excitement to be had. Those 10,500 athletes making their way down the Seine. It'll be quite the spectacle no matter what happens. So it's definitely one for our viewers at home to be watching.
And Sophie, we've heard reports, we've been speaking about this for weeks here on GB News. 40,000 security guards in Paris, 10,000 soldiers. We can hear sirens in the background. Of course, there have been terror threats at the quarter-finals of the Champions League back in April from the Islamic State. They reared their heads. Now we've got this chaos on the trains. It appears to be joined up. It appears to be coordinated. Is there a sense amongst people you're talking to and meeting that there's an atmosphere, there's an edge that's taken the gloss off what should be a fantastic day?
I wouldn't say so, Martin. I mean, this is an incredibly joyful event, the Olympic Games. It is the greatest and the biggest show on earth. 1 billion people expected to tune in at home today into the opening ceremony alone. So I think those fans who've actually been able to make it here, there is an undertone of, you say, incessant sirens. I think we can see now some more of the delegations being taken through the Arc de Triomphe here. They're most likely officials, very important officials by the look of it, with the sheer volume of police that they have with them. Maybe as well, I'm not sure, that could well be some more athletes over there. If we can quickly pan over on that bus. Just the bus over there, that's got athletes aboard who will be being taken to the start of the opening ceremony. But to go back to my point, I think that this is such a joyful thing. For those people who've managed to make it to Paris, they're just trying to focus on the excitement. There is so much to come. There's obviously the spectacle of the opening ceremony, but so many amazing athletes to compete across 32 sports over the coming days. 206 countries competing in these Olympics. So people will have been flying in from all over the world. Yes, it's a bit of a nightmare for Team GB. UK trying to come over on the Eurostar. But there'll be people from all over the world here today. We've just seen some people from Mexico, we've seen people from Portugal, we've seen people from Fiji yesterday. We were on the metro with some people from Fiji yesterday, and they were having the time of their lives. And I think that's what the Olympics is all about. There are always going to be hiccups. Obviously, in this instance, perhaps slightly greater than one might have hoped for. But that doesn't take away from the fact that this is the Olympic Games and it is an incredibly special thing to be a part of. So I think fans here will try and forget any kind of hiccups that take place and just try and get on with it and enjoy it the best they can. That's certainly what I'm going to be doing anyway.
Well, thank you, Sophie Reaper, there from the Arc de Triomphe. And, of course, the top brass, they won't get bothered about Eurostar. They were cruising past in their blacked-out limousines. 'Twas ever the case. Sophie Reaper will cross back to you throughout the show for more. Thank you very much. Superb. Now, we'll, of course, have lots more on this massive story throughout the show, and there's plenty of coverage on our website, gbnews.com, and you've helped to make it the fastest-growing national news website in the country, so thank you very much. Now, get ready, because there's still plenty of time to grab your chance to win £30,000 in the Great British Giveaway. It's our biggest cash prize of the year, and it's totally tax-free. Now, what would you do with all of that extra cash? Well, here's how you could win the lot.
Don't miss your chance to win our Super Summer Giveaway. With your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date, which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Now, you might need 30 grand in your pocket, because Sir Keir Starmer repeatedly said during the election campaign that Labour won't increase income tax, national insurance or VAT. But apparently there's a £20 billion black hole in the public finances, and we all know what's probably going to happen next, don't we? I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Well, we've got quite an extraordinary story to talk to you about now, because a triple amputee war hero is launching a bid to become the first to sail across the Pacific Ocean non-stop, solo and unsupported.
Craig Wood was blown up as a teenager by the Taliban in Afghanistan, but now he's hoping to change the perception of disabled people and raise money for other limbless veterans like himself. And Craig joins us now. Morning.
So, Craig, you are extraordinary. You are planning to take up to 80 days to sail from La Paz in Mexico to Japan.
Yeah.
How many miles is that?
It'd be over 6,000.
Amazing.
Amazing. And it will take you how long?
The minimum it's going to take me is 60 days. It could be up to 80. Yeah.
And that's on your own. You've done plenty of this before, haven't you? You've done lots of solo sailing.
Yeah, I've done quite a bit of solo sailing, but not as big as this. It is the world's biggest ocean, after all.
And why that particular route?
I wanted it to be a challenge, not just for me, but for anyone.
Right.
So any able-bodied person can look at this and go, wow, that is difficult.
Yeah.
And so that was the main drive. Then it's become a bigger thing than that now. Now I'm raising money for charity, and I can truly inspire people to change their perception on what is possible for disabled people.
And if you don't mind, can we ask you what happened in 2009 in Afghanistan? What were the circumstances of your injury?
I was on a normal routine foot patrol. About 5 metres in front of me, a commando IED was triggered, and subsequently I became a triple amputee, both legs above the knee, left hand at the wrist, facial injuries, etc., etc.
The People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 3:26. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, later in the show, I'll have the latest from the United States as the FBI director casts doubt on whether Donald Trump was actually shot by a bullet earlier this month. Astonishing story. But before that, here's a question that I'm afraid might not cheer you up this Friday afternoon. Will the government raise taxes in its first budget? The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, is expected to unveil a black hole in the public finances of around 20 billion quid when she makes a statement to the House of Commons on Monday. I'm joined now by the former spokesperson for the chair of the Labour Party and friend of the show, James Mathewson. James, happy Friday. Although I wish it was a happy Friday for the British taxpayer, because we know where this is going. They've had a look at the books. It's worse than they thought. They're going to blame the Conservatives. They won't return to austerity. They've been crystal clear on that all along. They couldn't possibly do that. The Labour Party cannot look like the George Osborne Party. That can only mean one thing. Here come the tax rises.
Martin, it is a happy Friday. You're fine. I think in the long term, it's going to be fine. I think there's all these worries, all this pessimism about what's going to happen around taxes. It's all been spun since the election because the Tories knew that was the only line they could go on. And it's interesting, isn't it? The Tories knew that when presumably this black hole in the finances was there under them, they knew about it and they were conscious of it, and they were setting Labour up for a tax rise to deal with that. Now, look, if taxes rise somewhere, then all the headlines in the papers that are anti-Labour are all going to be Labour's put up taxes. But taxes are so wide-ranging, as we know. Taxes are on everything, you know? So it's about who pays those taxes. Where can they levy money from that won't affect that many people, or people who shouldn't have to shoulder the burden. So I don't think it's necessarily all bad news. I think they are setting up for something in this budget, but I think quicker and honestly, you know, up front would be the better way to go, rather than, you know, let's say they have like a lovely first year and then start drip feeding things out. I think it's more important to be clear and upfront with the British public from the start.
Well, James, there's two ways of doing this. They're going to go around Jeremy Corbyn's allotment and dig up his magic money tree, or they're going to have to start raising taxes. And it has to be a raise of taxes. Now, how could that money be raised? 20 billion quid, well, that's 2p on VAT, it's 4p on employee national insurance, or it's 3p on the basic rate of tax. Now, you're right, they probably won't do any of that, because that would impact the many and not the few. The few, they will be squeezed dry. Capital gains tax, perhaps inheritance tax. But the problem with that, James, we know throughout history, we know throughout every country on the planet that introduces punitive taxes on the richest, they simply clear off.
I don't think I agree with that, Martin. You'll be surprised to know, because I don't believe in trickle-down economics. And I don't believe that all of the wealth of a nation comes from those people. Now, if people want to leave this great country because they don't want to pay tax, let them leave. Let them go, because they shouldn't be contributing to our society. It's a point of pride, and people I know who pay high rate tax are very proud to do so because they're contributing to a system that makes our country work. And without them, obviously, we can't make things happen. Now, you're right, of course, we don't want everybody to clear off so that we can't spend money, but there's other ways to incentivize. And, you know, this comes down to the work that Jonathan Reynolds has been doing for years with the business team, what Rachel Reeves has been forging relationships in the City of London. Because if Labour had that tetchy relationship as it did under Jeremy Corbyn with business, with finance, then perhaps we would see big banks, big money lenders, big sources of the financial sector clear off. But I don't believe we would see that now, because there's other incentives to them working here than just taxation. You know, we can't just have a race to the bottom with taxation with countries around the world. We have to be better than that. We have to be able to say, if you're going to work here, if you're going to live here, if you're going to run your business here, then you need to contribute to this country, to its system, and to its great achievements like the NHS and the welfare state.
James, how long do you think it will wash with the electorate to blame the Conservatives? Oh, it's much worse than we thought. We went through the books. They really left the biscuit tin empty. And as a consequence, we're going to have to put up taxes. And don't blame us, blame the last lot. How long do you think that's going to wash? When people... ordinary hard workers are getting dragged into higher rate tax through fiscal drag because the tax thresholds remain the same while inflation goes up. How long is Sir Keir Starmer's honeymoon period going to last before reality bites? I give it till Christmas.
Oh, Christmas, really? I think, to be fair, under David Cameron and George Osborne, who had a phenomenal PR campaign when they got in around, you know, who left the note, Liam Byrne left the note saying there's no money left. That worked on the doorstep. I was knocking doors last time for the Labour Party in 2019, and that was still being brought up. That note was being brought up then, you know, all those years later after all those Tory governments. So I think it does last a while if they do it in the right way. But again, we should be better than this. We shouldn't just be petty party political beings, should we? We shouldn't just be throwing tribalism around like that. I think it's important that the Labour Party is bigger than that and better than that, and stands up and takes responsibility and says, look, we're in charge now. We'll put the let bygones be bygones, and we'll run the country in a way that's right for the many and not the few. Absolutely.
OK, well, I like your glass half full attitude, but your glass might be a little bit emptier when Sir Keir Starmer takes a bit out of it. James Mathewson, always a pleasure. Have a great Friday afternoon. There's lots more still to come between now and 4 o'clock. I'll get reaction to the news. The petrol stations ripped off customers by a staggering 1.6 billion quid last year. But first, it's your headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. Just after 3:30, and the top story this afternoon. The police watchdog says it has now launched a criminal investigation into an officer who was filmed kicking and stamping on a man's head at Manchester Airport. The IOPC is looking into whether that officer's use of force was acceptable. And there have been widespread protests following the incident on Tuesday, with demonstrators blocking tram lines and roads in the city. 3 armed police were seriously injured as they attended to reports of an assault, which happened before the event seen in this video, which has been shared widely online. We are also expecting to hear from the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham. We'll bring that to you live as soon as that happens. Well, Downing Street says the Prime Minister is among those who've been caught up in the travel chaos after France's high-speed train network was targeted by a series of arson attacks ahead of tonight's opening ceremony of the Paris Olympics. Sir Keir Starmer was due to take the Eurostar but had to fly there instead. It's after fires were started near at least 3 French train lines today. The state-owned SNCF says its services were the victim of what's been called a massive attack, which they say was aimed at paralysing the network. Mel Stride has become the 4th Conservative MP to enter the race to become the party's next leader. The Shadow Work and Pension Secretary joins James Cleverly, Tom Tugendhat and Robert Jenrick in the contest to take over from Rishi Sunak. The regulator that oversees NHS care services in England is not fit for purpose, according to the Health Secretary. An independent review into the Care Quality Commission has revealed significant internal failings that are hampering its ability to keep a check on health and social care institutions. And to the US, where Barack Obama has endorsed Kamala Harris to become the next president of the United States. In a video of their phone conversation, Mr Obama said he couldn't be prouder to support her campaign. He and his wife, Michelle Obama, say they'll do everything to get Ms Harris into the Oval Office. Those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, I'm Sam Francis. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick look at the markets for you this afternoon. The pound will buy you $1.2863 and €1.1838. The price of gold this hour, £1,859.68 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 8,275 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you very much, Sam. Now, if you want to get in touch with us here at GB News, simply go to gbnews.com/your say, and I'll read out the best of your messages a little later in the show. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Afternoon, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A mix of sun and showers today, but much of the south staying fine into this evening. A few livelier showers further north and west, weather fronts here, and low pressure sitting just to the south of Iceland. That's generating the showers, but further south, I say most places staying dry. Just one or two drifting in across southwest England, but much of eastern England having clear spells through the evening. And the showers elsewhere will tend to fade away this evening as well, so many will have a dry night. Later in the night, the clouds thickening up again and some wetter weather returning to northwest England and southwest Scotland. With clearer spells, it'll be a pretty chilly night, actually, because certainly compared to earlier in the week, temperatures in some rural spots down to single figures. Generally a fine start to the weekend. The main exception to that will be far south of Scotland and northwest England. One or two showers coming into Wales and the southwest early on, but generally it'll be a dry and a sunny start. There's that wetter weather, not great across the lakes early on and the far south of Scotland. A few showers in the south of Northern Ireland too, and across the highlands of Scotland. But again, a good part of central and northern Scotland will start the weekend dry and sunny. And overall, a drier day tomorrow across the west coast of Scotland compared to today. That heavier rain, though, over northern England and southern Scotland will tend to shift, and it'll break up a little bit, so it won't be cloudy all day. There'll be some sunny spells, but some heavier showers in this zone across the Midlands, Wales and northeast England into the afternoon. The odd rumble of thunder is possible. Much of the southeast staying dry. As I said, a drier day for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Feeling warm in the sunshine, cooling off when the downpours come along. And there'll still be quite a few of those heavy showers over England and Wales during Saturday evening, eastern Scotland also, but they should tend to fade away and disappear for Sunday, because Sunday looks like a fine day by and large, generally fine and sunny, and signs of something a bit hotter into next week.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm John Vincent. Queues on the M62 westbound in West Yorkshire. It's all due to an accident at junction 23 for Huddersfield. Slow for the M6 southbound in the West Midlands due to an earlier accident at junction 10 for Wolverhampton. We've seen slow traffic on the M5 northbound in Worcestershire. It's due to an earlier obstruction in the road between junction 8 for the M50 and 7 for Worcester. Slow traffic in South Wales, very slow in both directions for the M4 at Port Talbot. That's between junction 38 Margam and 42 Britain Ferry. Queues on the M25 anti-clockwise in Hertfordshire due to an earlier broken down car just after junction 17 Maple Cross. And it's slow on the M25 clockwise in Kent in the roadworks between junction 4 Orpington and 6 for Godstone. And that's the latest traffic and travel news.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us! Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 3:39. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Later in the show, I'll talk about the new report that shows that less than 3% of the European Union's 4.25 million illegal immigrants were even deported in the past 5 years. An astonishing report. And here are some more figures that might make you angry as well. Motorists were ripped off by petrol stations to the tune of a staggering £1.6 billion last year. The Competition and Markets Authority says that their profit margins have gone up significantly in recent years. Simon Williams from the RAC said the amount that drivers are being overcharged is nothing short of outrageous. And I'm joined now by Howard Cox, who's the founder of the Fair Fuel UK campaign group and a man who's done more than anybody perhaps in British history to fight for motorists. Howard, always a pleasure to see you. Howard, you've been campaigning on this for donkey's years, and it seems not only do things not change, it's getting worse. Howard, tell us what's going on, tell us the worst offenders, and tell us what you plan to do to try and put the brakes on this.
Well, thank you, Martin, for your kind words. And it's lovely to be on your show again. What we're seeing is what I predicted 5-6 years ago, that unless, we have Ofcom, we have Ofwatch, we have Ofgem, all of these are consumer regulatory or price regulatory bodies, but we never had anything for 37 million drivers. And to cut a long story short, I proposed about 8 years ago to Robert Jenrick, when he was actually Exchequer Secretary, a body called Pump Watch. And Pump Watch was supposedly to actually fundamentally monitor pump prices on a daily basis and report them to drivers so drivers could choose where to go for the cheapest fuel. But unfortunately, even though Pump Watch was introduced by Claire Coutinho in January of this year, I met with her and she was very kind and said, thank you for all the good work you're doing with this. The big mistake the Tories made was making it a voluntary process for forecourt retailers to actually supply their daily wholesale data and pricing data on a voluntary basis. And unfortunately, only 40% of our outlets have actually done that. And what that means is that the data is not valid. It can't be used by drivers to actually judge which pumps to go and visit. And there you go. That's what we've got in the situation now. And I predicted it needed to have legislative teeth. It needed to be really pushed forward. I want every retailer to make a decent living, but unfortunately, they're making twice as much profit as they were 3 or 4 years ago. They were about diesel and petrol was about 8 pence per litre of profit in terms of wholesale price minus the retail price. It's about 7-8p. Now it's 13, 14, 15, 16p. And on motorway service stations, it's 40p. So for every car going into a motorway service station, these retailers are making something like £20 per average family car. So what we're going to do about it, Marty, is very, very simple. We're going to lobby hard and push hard. But I do not believe Labour are up to actually taking this on.
Howard, isn't there a double bind here? And by the way, every time I have to fill up a motorway service station, I hate myself for weeks. I feel like I've had my pockets picked in doing it, and I feel, why did I do that? Anyhow, back to the serious point. Isn't there a double bind here? Because the government says it hates cars, but it's addicted to the taxation it takes from petrol revenue. So is there any incentive for the government to clamp down on this when they need all of that tax money from motorists?
Well, you're absolutely right. The higher the price, the more VAT they get. And, of course, VAT is on the fuel duty as well, which I think is immoral, a tax on a tax. But Labour, we'll see what's going to happen. Louise Haigh and Rachel Reeves, they're the two people I'm going to be targeting very hard on all of this issue. But the important thing is we have Pump Watch in place. We now have the mechanism. What we're going to do is make it a legal requirement that garages report their daily pricing data and their wholesale prices every single day. It's only a simple thing of entering data, about 4 or 5 figures every day. They should be able to do that with no problem at all. And if they do that, they won't have the pressure that I think we're coming from motorists, because motorists could then make a choice. The thing we have, though, is that, I'm hearing that fuel duty is going to go up 10 pence in the budget. And as we know, under a Labour administration, it happened under Blair and Brown, fuel duty went up 46%. But under the Conservatives and with my campaigning for the last 15 years, we had a freeze in fuel duty. So I'm afraid it doesn't look good for motorists at the moment, both on the commercial side in terms of Pump Watch and certainly on the taxation side.
37 million British drivers in the UK. That's a lot of votes, and nobody fights harder for them than you. Howard Cox, founder of Fair Fuel UK. Keep up the good work, and I'll do all I can to support you. Always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you. Now, a reminder of this hour's big breaking news. A police constable is being criminally investigated over the force used during the incident that saw a man kicked in the head at Manchester Airport on Tuesday. We'll have more on that next. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
An employment tribunal has found that a senior lawyer telling a legal secretary that she looked nice created an intimidating environment and made her feel violated.
Well, she's won her sexual harassment suit, so is saying someone looks nice acceptable in the workplace anymore?
Well, joining us now to debate this is political commentator Christine Hamilton, who thinks it should be, and author and journalist Rebecca Reid, who thinks making comments like these are unnecessary. OK, Rebecca, why is it unnecessary to tell your colleague they look nice?
Well, how somebody looks at work shouldn't be particularly important or relevant, but I think my issue here is that it's used as a sort of dismissive way to make women feel silly for complaining about things. Like, oh, it's just saying you look nice, why does it matter? But we all know there are different ways of saying things, and if you are an older man in a position of power, looking a woman up and down and saying, oh, you look nice, in a lascivious tone, which, as far as we know, is quite possibly what happened, that's not acceptable, that's not workplace appropriate, and it would make somebody feel uncomfortable.
Christine, she's right, Rebecca, isn't she? It depends how it's said. If you've got someone who's sleazy saying, oh, you look nice, you're going to be a bit off-put, aren't you?
Yes, we don't know whether this was said in a lascivious tone or not, and as far as I can see this particular case, the boss went too far and he did a lot of other things as well. But what worries me is that the tribunal has ruled that just saying you look nice could be included as sexual harassment. Now, I think that is ridiculous.
Realistically, women don't make these accusations for fun. Women don't make these accusations to be difficult. They do it because they've been made to feel unsafe or unable to work in a certain place.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back. Your time is 3:47. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Later in the show, I'll be joined by a genuine comedy legend who's going to take his brilliant act to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. And believe me, you will not want to miss that. But before that, let's get more on this hour's huge breaking news story. A police constable is being criminally investigated over the force used during the incident that saw a man kicked in the head at Manchester Airport on Tuesday. And joining me now to discuss this is the retired Scotland Yard Detective Inspector Hamish Brown. Hamish, welcome to the show. Can we go in, please, on this breaking news line? The criminal investigation for assault. This officer is now under investigation, due to be interviewed shortly. What's your take on that? Do you think that's justified, or does this send out a terrible message to the policeman?
Well, yes, it's something I was expecting, quite frankly. We'll have to see what comes out of the investigation. But I'll say straight away, it looked absolutely awful, this whatever happened. And it didn't surprise me that, one, the officers suspended, and two, there was going to be an investigation, a criminal investigation. But it will be like any other case, you know. Those concerned, those carrying out the investigation, will have to look at all the evidence available. Now, a lot of it is going to be CCTV, the clip which you're showing at the moment. But investigators know they can't cherry pick just the odd little bit which looks bad. What they've got to do is find all the evidence, all the filming, and does it paint another picture? It might strengthen an investigation, it might weaken it, we don't know. And if charges were brought, then there's something called unused material. Now, those defending, those prosecuting know this full well. And what that means is the prosecution just can't put forward the bad bits. If there are things which weaken their case or any other evidence, they've got to give it to the defence. So there's going to be a lot of work involved in this, which may take some time. And in due course, the officer will be investigated and he'll take legal advice how he's going to deal with that. So in for a bit of a long haul, I think.
And the key missing evidence, the evidence that isn't made public yet, the CCTV, the body cam image, that'll play a crucial part, as you just mentioned.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So it's for someone to view it, collate it, put it all together and present it in a tangible form. And it's important the police and those investigating are seen to do something, and as far as they can, not give a running commentary on the investigation, but as far as they can, keep the public appraised of what's going on. Quite rightly so. This has caused concern, interest, questions asked, and I'm sure everyone just wants to get on with it. But there's another aspect to this, and this is the public order side. And we've seen demonstrations outside, I think it's a police station in Rochdale. And what worries me, that there's a right of assembly under the European Court of Human Rights. It's Article 11. Yes, a right of assembly. You've got that freedom of speech under Article 10. But at the same time, this can't turn into a riot. And my view is very often the hangers-on, the people with their own political angle, sort of get involved and really muddy the waters. And this is not going to help anyone. And I think it's quite noticeable, assuming the report I read is accurate, is that the man who was kicked in the head, his family have said they want no part of any political group. I think, like me, they want the investigation to go on. It should be thorough, it should be fair, and we'll find out what happens at the end of the day. We saw last week I think it was this week, disgraceful scenes in Leeds over nothing. And is this just sort of rebellion, fanatical behaviour by some who jump on the bandwagon so they can go and they think they've got licence to cause damage and mayhem? Well, they haven't, and they'll be subject to the law as well, I can assure you. So let's hope there's calm, people are sensible, and let people get on with their jobs.
Hamish, could I briefly ask you what kind of message you think this sends out to the police officer? A lot of people watching this show, a lot of people in Britain are saying actually they would rather the police officer gets involved the way it happened in the airport as opposed to the way it happened in Leeds where the officer simply ran off. It seems if the police do try and take a robust response, then they are thrown under the bus. That's what a lot of people are saying to us here. OK, his actions in the heat of the moment may have been unjustified, but to criminally investigate him, is that really sending out a message that the police people are damned if they do?
Well, goodness me, I mean, I joined in the 70s and haven't things moved on, notably with the CCTV, and people are more critical and inquiring of the police, maybe rightly so. But there's so much out there, and the police are continually having to watch their backs. I mean, apart from people whose job it is, like people who work on TV, nobody else will want a TV camera on them every day they're at work. They'd be really put off with that. And in fact, police find themselves in that situation. And I think they are becoming more cautious about what they can do. I've got great respect for the Greater Manchester Police, and there's some fine officers there. And whatever the rights and wrongs of this is, it doesn't reflect the police as a whole. And as far as the police apparently running away in Leeds, there are times...
Hamish Brown, I'm afraid we have to leave it there. With Hamish, we've simply run out of time. I'm sorry, we'll have to pick this conversation up another time, but thank you for joining us. Now there's chaos in France just a few hours before the Olympics opening ceremony. Arson attacks have paralysed the country's rail networks. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel. Now it's your weather with Alex Deacon.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Afternoon, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A mix of sun and showers today, but much of the south staying fine into this evening. A few livelier showers further north and west, weather fronts here, and low pressure sitting just to the south of Iceland. That's generating the showers, but further south, I say most places staying dry. Just one or two drifting in across southwest England, but much of eastern England having clear spells through the evening. And the showers elsewhere will tend to fade away this evening as well, so many will have a dry night. Later in the night, the clouds thickening up again and some wetter weather returning to northwest England and southwest Scotland. With clearer spells, it'll be a pretty chilly night, actually, because certainly compared to earlier in the week, temperatures in some rural spots down to single figures. Generally a fine start to the weekend. The main exception to that will be far south of Scotland and northwest England. One or two showers coming into Wales and the southwest early on, but generally it'll be a dry and a sunny start. There's that wetter weather, not great across the lakes early on and the far south of Scotland. A few showers in the south of Northern Ireland too, and across the Highlands of Scotland. But again, a good part of central and northern Scotland will start the weekend dry and sunny. And overall, a drier day tomorrow across the west coast of Scotland compared to today. That heavier rain, though, over northern England and southern Scotland will tend to shift, and it'll break up a little bit, so it won't be cloudy all day. There'll be some sunny spells, but some heavier showers in this zone across the Midlands, Wales and northeast England into the afternoon. The odd rumble of thunder is possible. Much of the southeast staying dry. As I said, a drier day for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Feeling warm in the sunshine, cooling off when the downpours come along. And there'll still be quite a few of those heavy showers over England and Wales during Saturday evening, eastern Scotland also, but they should tend to fade away and disappear for Sunday, because Sunday looks like a fine day by and large, generally fine and sunny, and signs of something a bit hotter into next week.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm John Vincent. Delays on the M876 southbound in Falkirk at junction 8, that's the M80. Slow for the M62 westbound in West Yorkshire due to an earlier accident at junction 23 Huddersfield. Slow for the M6 southbound in the West Midlands due to an earlier accident at junction 10 Wolverhampton. And nearby we're seeing slow traffic for the M5 northbound to join the M6 at junction 8. We're seeing a traffic slowdown on the M4 in both directions near Port Talbot. That's between junction 38, Margam, and 42 for Britain Ferry. Queues on the M5 northbound in Somerset. There's a traffic problem between junction 26 Wellington and 25 for Taunton. And the M20 coastbound in Kent is partially blocked due to a broken down vehicle between junction 8 Leeds Castle and 9 for Ashford. And that's the latest traffic and travel news.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far, and it could be yours. Charles was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
I'm Charles. I'm on £18,000 cash. It was just amazing, and as soon as it goes into your bank account, it just changed. It's a life-changing thing.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hey, very good afternoon to you. It's 4 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News, broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster, all across the UK. On today's show, a police constable is being criminally investigated over the force used during the incident that saw a man kicked in the head at Manchester Airport on Tuesday. In a short while, across to Manchester, where Mayor Andy Burnham is about to give a live statement. In fact, now let's cross to that statement now. Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham is giving a statement.
Brings people back together. Together with the Deputy Mayor, I visited Rochdale this morning and met with around 40 community partners and was grateful for the honest conversations we had. People spoke of the family's appeal for calm. It was echoed in the room, and I am today amplifying that message as loudly and clearly as I can so that everyone hears it. Lots of people this week have had their say on events here, and it is important now that those same people hear what people in Greater Manchester want to happen next. What they want is a process that is able to proceed on the basis, as I said before, of being fair to everyone, rigorous, swift, and has input from Greater Manchester communities. And that has got to be the priority now, so that the full facts can be established and we can get to the full truth of what happened. That's in everyone's interest. What people here don't want, and I heard this very clearly in the room this morning, is politicians without possession of the facts, exploiting the situation for their own political agenda with zero regard for the effect on the ground in communities in Greater Manchester. I want to finish by repeating the call for calm, particularly over the coming weekend. Things are now moving forward, the right steps are being taken and people's voices are being heard. It's in everyone's interest that from here we proceed with things in a measured and a peaceful way. Thank you very much indeed for coming, everybody, and I will now be available for individual interviews. Thank you.
And that was Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham there giving a short press conference on the situation surrounding the incident after Manchester Airport. No mention of the breaking news line, the latest news line. That officer now under a criminal investigation, but he did say that he met with family members and local representatives of the Greater Manchester area, particularly in Rochdale. And he said people spoke of the family's call for calm. And he said, I'm here to echo that sentiment. He said lots of people have had their say about this incident. Lots of people, he said, have been using the situation for their own political gain. But we need to listen to what the family are saying, and the family is saying that we don't want that to happen. He also added to a message he said yesterday, we need to establish the full picture, because, of course, this video on your screens now has been around the world and back. This is the aftermath of what we believe to be an incident before this involving assaults on police officers. Greater Manchester Police have been very, very clear on that. One of the female officers had her nose broken, 3 required hospital treatment. None of that footage, of course, has been made available. So Andy Burnham there clearly saying we need to get the full picture to establish the full facts. And then he added, what we don't want to see are politicians without knowledge of this full picture to use this situation for their own purposes. He's referring there, of course, he didn't name them, but he's referring to people in the area who did this. Jack Khan, who stood for the Workers' Party, George Galloway's party, he was asking for protests like you've never seen before. And in fact, we've seen 2 nights of unrest. And then the lawyer Ahmed Yaqub also stood as a pro-Gaza candidate at elections in the West Midlands, including for the mayoralty before. So he's calling for calm everywhere. It's in everyone's best interests that we proceed with full calm. That was Andy Burnham, the Greater Manchester Mayor, giving a statement on the situation of that police officer and the incident at Manchester Airport. Now, moving on to the absolute chaos in France on the day that the Olympic Games are officially open. The Olympics are under attack, with the French high-speed rail network left paralysed following a series of targeted arson attacks. What's been described as coordinated sabotage, signals along tracks were set on fire and cables were cut and set alight. The problems meant Sir Keir Starmer had to fly to Paris, where in the last few minutes he was greeted by French President Emmanuel Macron. You can see those pictures on your screen now. Well, I'm joined by our Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, welcome to the show. Any developments in the last hour since we spoke? There were rumours it may have been the Russians, and now the Israelis seem to have waded in, saying this may have something to do with Islamists. Mark White, it's a chaotic situation. What's the latest?
Well, talk about a muddy picture, because we've also just had US officials being quoted by NBC in the States suggesting that it might have been anarchist groups or extreme left-wing groups following information received from the French government. So who to believe? All we can tell you is that the French Transport Minister has been speaking on French television, and he has said that they are preparing for the potential for other attacks in the hours and days ahead. They've confirmed that investigators have found a number of incendiary devices. Now, we don't know whether these are spent devices, having already ignited and caused the damage they did to signals and these track cables, or whether they may have been as yet unexploded incendiary devices. But the word from that Transport Minister, ominous, as suggesting that they are preparing for the potential of more of these direct attacks, sabotage on the rail network or elsewhere. We don't know what more may lie in state, but these were clearly designed to cause maximum chaos. The positions that they were put in didn't cause damage to the rail track bed, but they did target the infrastructure, the cables and the signals that are vital to operate these trains on any track. So that's meant that the high-speed trains initially couldn't run on the tracks. They've been diverted onto slower lines. That's impacted the number of services that can run. Everyone that was planning to get to Paris is being disrupted, and we're seeing those queues just stacking up. And the real concern, of course, is that given that the opening ceremony this evening was going to not just accommodate some 10,500 athletes, also 300,000 people who were going to be viewing that event along the Seine, there will inevitably be a significant proportion of them who may well have been caught up in this. We're getting word that a group of athletes or two groups of athletes, I should say, have been delayed. We're not told where their trains were coming from, but they are in the chaos, in the midst of the chaos, which is, you know, really clearly upsetting for them, because athletes want to participate in that opening ceremony as well, and to be part of what is undoubtedly going to be a spectacular event, Martin.
And Mark White, it makes you realise the multitude of angles that these coordinated attacks can take. We're almost expecting heightened security around the venues. Of course, the quarterfinals of the Champions League in April. The Islamic State issued a terror threat against that. 40,000 security guards around Paris, 10,000 soldiers on the streets. But this is happening on train lines away from all of that observation and surveillance. The opportunities for a malign agent to create chaos, Mark White, there are just multiple ways, and this sounds like it just could carry on.
Well, yes, and it's also being exacerbated by the decision of the French government not to go down the traditional route of building an Olympic park that can be better secured by police and private security personnel, such as they did in Rio and, of course, in 2012 in London, where you had that Olympic park, a sterile area that could be well managed. Of course, some venues were outside of that zone, but the vast majority were contained within the Olympic park. Instead, the option that the French government have gone for is to spread out events right across Paris. So you're talking about the need then to secure multiple different sites with many thousands of people who want to view these events, travelling in and out of these particular sites. And that is why, for instance, we've got this huge policing and security operation involving 45,000 police and gendarmes, 10,000 members of the military. There are 22,000 private security guards. There are police officers from forces around the world that have gone there in a sort of liaison capacity to help look after their own citizens in Paris. There are 250 British police officers and 50 police dogs from the UK that have gone across as well.
Okay, Mark White, thanks for that update, and we'll be crossing back to you later on, no doubt, on this fast developing story. Thank you very much for joining us, Mark White. So there's lots of doom and gloom surrounding the Olympics, sadly, but let's cheer up now. Let's look forward and try and enjoy an incredible couple of weeks of sports. And to help us do that, I'm now joined in the studio, I'm delighted to say, by the former Olympic gymnast Lisa Mason. Lisa, thank you so much for coming in. So before we move on to the athletes' second part, Britain's chances, you were nodding away there about the Olympic Village, because you've been in these before. And so in terms of the athletes and the teams and the extended groups' security, being inside a village must be a very secure environment. Does this make you feel...
Well, first of all, I was really shocked the fact that a lot of the athletes were travelling via Eurostar, because generally speaking, they fly out to an airport, and I know climate change is going to scream, oh, they shouldn't be catching aeroplanes, but normally you would have, you know, Olympic Village buses collect you from the airport, take you directly to there, where there is security to get in and out. You can't just walk in. It's very tight-knit, and that's what makes the Olympics like part of a great experience, not just competing. The whole environment in the Olympic Village is just a real upper, it's a real vibe, and it's everyone's knows they're safe because you're literally secure with security, metal detectors, you've got police that surround the whole village, so you can feel safe walking around. So I'm really surprised that this is kind of where they're at with this Olympics.
And of course it's impossible to switch off to the outside when everyone's on social media. Do you think the athletes might be looking at this and feeling a bit uneasy themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and we got the opening ceremony today, which is something something to look forward to. Every athlete, oh my gosh, I unfortunately didn't get to do the opening ceremony in my Olympics because we had the competition a few days after, so we had to save our legs because it is a real process. You're out there for hours, walking around the tracks, staying in the tunnels, waiting for your country to come forward, but it's an amazing experience. This is something a lot of athletes look forward to, going around, you know, waving when they get cheered on from their, you know, their country comes up. So it's a shame that it's come to this point where, you know, there is a risk of security and, you know, a lot of athletes are unfortunately, hopefully, I mean, it's not the only way to get to Paris, but, you know, not be able to attend that is really, really sad.
Okay. Lisa, in terms of trying to talk about the sport, we've done very little of that so far, apart from the dressage and the cruelty of that. Putting that to one side. Who is there out in Team GB to keep an eye on? Who do you think should be a hot shot that we can watch?
I mean, athletics is always the #1 thing to watch. I mean, me being an ex-gymnast, I'm very, very hopeful with our Team GB this year. I think we have Becky Downey, who is a veteran in the Olympics for Great Britain gymnastically, and I think if she hits it, and she's going to knock it out the park. We do have some young girls that are coming up, and I think team-wise we can do very, very, very well gymnastically. The men's are a very strong team as well. As I said, diving we generally tend to do pretty well in, but I think, you know, overall it being so close to home, having the crowd on your side is always kind of a energy pusher, and it's a great feeling when you're so close home, because so many people can come and support you now, you know, being in Paris and it being, as I said, very close. So.
There's been a lot of talk about the tickets being really expensive at these Olympics as well. It's like £5,000 to watch the 100 metres, €600 to watch the swimming. They're going to have to start knocking those prices down on it, because an athlete presumably doesn't want to perform in front of a half-empty stadium.
Exactly. I mean, shockingly, I'm an Olympian myself. We don't even get discount on tickets to even come out there. Shocking prices, yes. I think it's quite sad. I mean, inflation is a real thing at the moment, but
£6,000, that's not inflation, that's a rip-off.
That is a lot. It's unfortunate, and I hope that, you know, there is a crowd that is behind these athletes, because I think the worst thing was when lockdown happened, we had the Olympics and there was hardly any crowds there. I think that was so sad for me watching it as an Olympian, because, you know, the crowd getting behind you and performing in such a huge facility as well, because a lot of these athletes, unless you're used to competing at World Championships in massive arenas, you don't get that crowd. And the Olympic crowd is completely different from World Championships, European Championships.
Tell us about that. Tell us about your experience as a performer, as an athlete, of being there. I mean, you train your entire life for this. This is the moment. What does it feel like to actually step out and do the business?
It's surreal. Do you know, I remember to this day coming out and from the tunnel, because you have your podium training, so you see the arena. But when you come out for competition, you're in this tunnel, you start coming out and you just look up, and it's very surreal, because all of the seats are filled and you hear this eruption and they call your country and everyone's like, ah! So it's very, very surreal. It's something, I mean, I've done every competition there is possible to do, Commonwealth Games, you know, Europeans, World Championships. So it's just a completely different feeling, and it's a completely different, you know, scenario and environment. And it makes me happy having my memories, even though I was sick when I competed as well, which was an absolute nightmare. But for me, it's still my happiest experience, and you're with the best of the best. So you come out and you're very much secure in oh my goodness, this is the Olympic Games. But you know what? Chances of you becoming an Olympian are 0.003. Wow. So there you are.
And also, like, the politicisation of this, the desecration of train lines, the ominous sort of threats around security. Do you think in all this people are forgetting that people like you, Olympians, have given their everything, given their all, you know, for a memory that will live forever, both for you, your family, your community? And so therefore they should just, like, back off and let it be about the sport.
I mean, it should be. I think you've had a lot of federations that have been pushing their athletes, especially Team GB, to be very open with their political stand on things. But the Olympics, the whole point of it is to bring the world together, to celebrate sport from every country, and it's sad that, you know, we're at this point where people have to try and sabotage something that is meant to be something so special and so great, and as I said, bring the world together. They try and destroy it and, you know, cause problems and make it a negative instead of a positive. So
Beautifully put, and thank you very much for joining us. A positive story, and don't we all need one at the moment? Thank you very much, former Olympic gymnast Lisa Mason. Absolute pleasure to have you in the studio. Thank you. Now, moving on, we'll cross live to Paris a little later in the show for a full update. And there's plenty of coverage on our website, gbnews.com. You've helped to make it the fastest-growing national news website in the country. Now, there's still plenty of time to grab your chance to win £30,000 in the Great British Giveaway. It's our biggest prize of the year, and it's totally tax-free. Now, what would you do with all that extra wonga? Well, here's how you could win it all.
£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far, and it could be yours. Charles was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
I'm Charles. I won £18,000 cash. It was just amazing, and as soon as it goes into your bank account, it just changed. It's a life-changing thing.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck. Guess look in now. 4 Tory MPs have now confirmed that they'll try to replace Rishi Sunak. I'm about to speak to a man who knows them very well to get his views. It's the former Deputy Chairman of the party, Jonathan Gullis. He's out there. He'll be in here in a minute. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
It was also announced that the Prince of Wales is set to star in a new 2-part documentary on ITV covering his mission to try and eradicate homelessness.
Well, let's talk about this and much, much more with Angela Levin, royal biographer, who joins us in the studio. I'm glad to hear that this documentary's been made, Angela, because I worried that he made this big announcement about homelessness, and I thought, goodness me, here is somebody who could maybe do something about this. And then it's all seemed to have gone quiet.
He's been very busy with it, actually. He's gone all over the country to see different areas and how they have been, and to try and change people's attitude to homelessness, that they're people who need help and want to get back into a normal life, and he's there to do it. I mean, we mustn't forget that in, I think it was 2009, he slept out in the street to see for himself what it was like, and he also helped people who are selling the magazine.
Big Issue, no?
Yes, the Big Issue. And he's worked all day long with the same man twice now. So I think he was actually just covering the basic about what it was like for him and how he can now help other people. He and Catherine are putting £3 million straight away into that, and it's going to
Where
be...
does that money come from?
Their own foundation, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so they're not taking it from our tax or anybody else's, you know. And there will be a lot more. And he's been getting the money to do this. And I think it's he wants to do this so badly because of his mother. You know, she took them to see people who were homeless.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 4:23. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, later this hour, the latest from the United States as the FBI director cast doubt on whether Donald Trump was really shot by a bullet earlier this month, or was it shrapnel? The story has captivated the States. We'll have more on that later. But before that, now to the latest on the battle to replace Rishi Sunak as the leader of the Conservative Party. And Mel Stride has today become the fourth Tory MP to announce that they are joining the race. He joins James Cleverly, Tom Tugendhat and Robert Jenrick, all of whom want to take over the top job from Mr Sunak. Well, a man who knows all of those fellas is now joining me in the studio, and it's the former Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party, Jonathan Gullis. John, welcome to the studio. A pleasure to see you. Let's start with Mel Stride, as he declared today. And he said he wants to go deeper into the centre ground of the party. What does that mean?
Well, first of all, I think it was quite a shock to many that Mel is putting himself forward. He's a very nice chap, very capable guy, certainly someone who should be in the shadow cabinet. For me, not someone I see as a future leader of the Conservative Party. And as you say, when he talked about going deeper into the centre ground, the problem I always have with this is no one defines what the centre ground means, because ultimately it means different things to different people. This country is a centre-right country. Majorities have been won massively from Boris Johnson to Margaret Thatcher. But by the way, even Tony Blair was pushing a lot of centre-right conservatism when it came to talking tough on immigration, talking tough on law and order. Obviously, we know that under Blair, the reality was very different. All right, smoke and mirrors. But I think that's, with Mel, I would love to understand and define what that means. And I suppose now he'll be fighting out with James Cleverly, who's kind of also pitching himself in that same space.
And James Cleverly said, only I can unite the party. Do you think he could?
Look, James is a very, very good communicator, really funny guy, certainly someone that I think has a lot to offer. I think the issue he's going to have is he's already ruling things out, such as not leaving the European Convention Court of Human Rights. Now, I think that's a difficult thing for him to rule out as quickly as he has done, because ultimately that leaves us on the same playing field as Labour, leaving Reform the space to the right to talk about it. And there is case after case of when this meddling court has prevented us not just deporting illegal migrants, but deporting foreign national offenders who have committed some of the worst crimes, such as murder, rape and paedophilia. So ultimately, I think that James should be careful of that, because there is a large still contingent of the Tory party membership and Conservative Parliamentary Party who think that if we can't reform, then we should leave.
OK, John, that brings us neatly on to the remaining two who've declared thus far. Let's start with Tom Tugendhat, because he says that he is ready to leave the ECHR. A few eyebrows were raised when he announced that, because a lot of people thought that he was also a centrist. Is he trying to outmanoeuvre Mr Farage, perhaps?
So, look, I think it was a shock to all of us, to be fair. It's something I've not heard Tom say before, but I am aware Tom has said that he's willing to derogate to ignore when he thinks rulings are not in the interest, and obviously it's been like an injunction, pyjama injunction, as they've become famously known now. I think the problem is when we've heard Tom talk and you go into the weeds of it, it's essentially the same line that Rishi Sunak has taken, which is we're within, we want to obviously work with the European Court, we would like to see reform work across our European neighbours and partners, and if push comes to shove, I'd be willing to leave. And I think that we're going to need more clarity on that. And I do wonder for Tom whether or not he's kind of opened up a door for himself here where he'll be spending most of his summer now answering that question more specifically, rather than talking about the things that are positive for him, which is when it came to that national insurance increase, I begrudgingly voted for it when it came to the social care. Tom actually was one of the very few who voted against it. So that shows real bravery, real principles, and shows his fiscal conservatism, which I think is where his strength lies.
OK, and then let's move on to the final candidate who's declared thus far, Robert Jenrick, former Immigration Minister. He seems to be so far going the most red meat, if you like, more of a kind of Nigel Farage type space, tough on borders, tough on immigration, also an ECHR leaver, but he has said that there'd be no space for Nigel Farage in the party. Can he be the answer? Is that the way to go towards the political right, or will that eliminate the centre ground voters?
So I think Rob's one of the most interesting ones to me, and I say that having worked with him when it came to that Rwanda bill, which I chose to abstain on because I was concerned that we hadn't gone far enough. Rob had obviously resigned from government, a very big decision, particularly when he was actually attending cabinet, and obviously was a very close friend and ally of our current leader, Rishi Sunak, as well. So that shows real conviction of his beliefs at the end of the day, and it's something that I do respect very highly. I think he's right, by the way, to rule out Nigel joining the party. And I think, in fact, Tom's was one of the first ones to rule it out. I think James has as well, and I'm sure Mel will follow through with that. Because essentially, I think Nigel's made it perfectly clear that he wants, or he's certainly in a party where his fellow MPs now and Richard Tice want to see the, quote, destruction of the Conservative Party. They certainly were chirpy to stop Andy Street becoming Mayor of the West Midlands. They were certainly chirpy to have made their point in the general election. I can't see a space where we would ever sit comfortably, and Nigel's now got his focus on reform, and I'm sure there'll be at times a cigarette paper between us on certain issues, but ultimately the Conservative Party is the oldest and most successful party in British and global political history.
A lot of people might say, though, John, that the Brexit Party, the Reform Party, wouldn't need to exist if the Conservatives had actually been Conservative. I digress. Who hasn't declared yet that's kind of caught your eye? Kemi Badenoch has booked his favourite 2-1. The Spectator have done a sting on her today, digging up social media posts from when she was 17, where she called Diane Abbott a racist. Actually, it seems to have made people like her more, not less. Kemi hasn't declared. Who else hasn't declared yet? Well, I'll ask you straight. Who would you like to be the leader?
Well, look, I want Priti Patel to become the leader of the Conservative Party and hope that she'll be putting her nomination in. I think Priti has shown through the fact that service to this party. Number one, she was brought in under the then former leader, William Hague, just after the 97 election, which was also a thumping defeat for us because, again, of failure to deliver busy infighting rather than looking outward. So she's seen what it's like on the ground firsthand, dealing with a parliamentary party that's recovering and rebuilding. She's then gone on to serve under David Cameron, Theresa May and Boris Johnson in very senior positions in Treasury, International Development, Home Office, all of which are very different types of Conservatives in many different ways. So she shows that broad church appeal as well. But she's also a politician that has stuck by her word. She has stood up for her beliefs. She backed Brexit in 2016, still very young in parliamentary terms, and risked a career being tarnished on the front bench if Brexit hadn't won. She was a Spartan in that time and stood by her principles. She voted against the Windsor Framework, so shows again her credibility, all of which reform voters will be looking for when it comes to finding someone in the Conservative Party they want to come back to, conviction of your belief, conviction of your morals. And I think that, therefore, her voting record demonstrates that time and again she stood up, but at the same time, she doesn't tour TV studios. She doesn't write news articles.
She ought to. I'd like to get in her ear.
Well, she's not smashing the Conservative Party around because she's a party person first and foremost and has been for over 30 years, which means that we haven't got leaflets with Priti's quotes or face on it being used to attack her own colleagues. So therefore, I think that is why she stands head and shoulders above the others.
OK, John, quickly, if we could. You lost your seat at the election, sadly, but the way you're talking now, I can see in your eyes you've got a taste for it. And like you're talking about Priti Patel's campaign, you still want to be involved in politics. You plan to come back?
I would love to come back at some stage in the future if an association will have me, if the voters will then have me too. But the most pressing priority is to find a job so I don't drive my missus mad by being on the sofa moaning and groaning from the sidelines, and actually being a good father, having been so absent when Monday to Wednesday being down in Westminster to my soon-to-be 4-year-old daughter and 2-year-old son, Amelia and William. So I'm looking forward to stepping up there and doing a lot more of the bedtime reading and bath times that I haven't been able to do in recent weeks.
It is one of those things, in my brief time in politics, you don't see a lot of your family. Jonathan Goodall, it's always a delight to see you.
Thank you.
Very best. Thanks for coming down and seeing us here in Westminster. And lots more still to come between now and 5 o'clock. We'll cross live to Paris, where guests are arriving ahead of the opening ceremony. Of course, it's been overshadowed by the travel chaos caused by vandalism. But first, it's your headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. It's just after 4:30. The top story from the newsroom this hour. Downing Street says the Prime Minister is among those who've been caught up in the travel chaos after France's high-speed train network was targeted by a series of arson attacks ahead of tonight's opening ceremony at the Paris Olympics. Sir Keir Starmer was due to take the Eurostar but had to fly there instead. It's after fires were started near at least 3 French train lines. The state-owned SNCF says its services were the victim of what it's calling a massive attack, which they say was aimed at paralysing the network. Here, the police watchdog says it has now launched a criminal investigation into an officer who was filmed kicking and stamping on a man's head at Manchester Airport. 3 armed police were seriously injured as they attended to reports of an assault, which happened before the event seen in the video, which has been shared widely online. There have been widespread protests following the incident this week, with demonstrators blocking tram lines and roads in the city. The IOPC is looking into whether the use of force was acceptable. Mel Stride has become the 4th Conservative MP to enter the race to become the party's next leader. The Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary joins James Cleverly, Tom Tugendhat and Robert Jenrick in the contest to take over from Rishi Sunak. The regulator that oversees NHS care services in England is not fit for purpose. That's according to the Health Secretary. An independent review into the Care Quality Commission has revealed significant failings that are hampering its ability to keep check on health and social care institutions. And finally to the US, where Barack Obama has now endorsed Kamala Harris to become the next president of the United States. In a video of their phone conversation, Mr. Obama said he couldn't be prouder to support her campaign. He and his wife Michelle say they'll do everything they can to get Ms. Harris into the Oval Office. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis. Your next update at 5 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam. Now, hundreds of you have been in touch so far. I've got all the papers here. I'll read out for you before the end of the show. If you want to have your say, then you do it by going to gbnews.com/your say. Get them coming in. I'll read a few of them out. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Afternoon, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A mix of sun and showers today, but much of the south staying fine into this evening. A few livelier showers further north and west, weather fronts here and low pressure sitting just to the south of Iceland. That's generating the showers, but further south, I say most places staying dry. Just 1 or 2 drifting in across southwest England, but much of eastern England having clear spells through the evening. And the showers elsewhere will tend to fade away this evening as well, so many will have a dry night. Later in the night, the clouds thickening up again and some wetter weather returning to northwest England and southwest Scotland. With clearer spells, it'll be a pretty chilly night, actually, because certainly compared to earlier in the week, temperatures in some rural spots down to single figures. Generally a fine start to the weekend. The main exception to that will be far south of Scotland and northwest England. 1 or 2 showers coming into Wales and the southwest early on, but generally it'll be a dry and a sunny start. There's that wetter weather, not great across the lakes early on and the far south of Scotland. A few showers in the south of Northern Ireland too and across the highlands of Scotland, but again a good part of central and northern Scotland will start the weekend dry and sunny. And overall, a drier day tomorrow across the west coast of Scotland compared to today. That heavier rain, though, over northern England and southern Scotland will tend to shift and it'll break up a little bit, so it won't be cloudy all day. There'll be some sunny spells, but some heavier showers in this zone across the Midlands, Wales and northeast England into the afternoon. The odd rumble of thunder is possible. Much of the southeast staying dry. As I said, a drier day for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Feeling warm in the sunshine, cooling off when the downpours come along. And there'll still be quite a few of those heavy showers over England and Wales during Saturday evening, eastern Scotland also, but they should tend to fade away and disappear for Sunday, because Sunday looks like a fine day by and large, generally fine and sunny, and signs of something a bit hotter into next week.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm John Vincent. In Falkirk, we've got stop-start traffic on the M876 southbound at junction 8 for the M80. Slow traffic on the M62 westbound in West Yorkshire due to an earlier accident at junction 23 Huddersfield. Slow for the M6 southbound in the West Midlands due to an earlier accident at junction 10 Wolverhampton. We're seeing queues on the M25 anti-clockwise in Kent. One lane closed there due to a broken down car at junction 1A Bobdon Way. Slow for the M4 westbound in Berkshire. One lane closed for recovery work for a broken-down vehicle between junction 13 Chieveley and 14 for Hungerford. And traffic struggling in both directions on the M4 towards Port Talbot, so it's slow from junction 38 Margam westbound and eastbound from junction 42 Britain Ferry. And that's the latest traffic and travel news.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 4:38. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Later in the show, I'll talk about the new report that shows that less than 3% of the European Union's 4.25 million illegal immigrants were deported in the past 5 years. 2.6% were deported. Astonishing. But before that, let's have more now on the absolute chaos in France on the day that the Olympic Games are officially opening. The Olympics are under attack, with the French high-speed rail network left paralysed following a series of targeted arson attacks in what's been described as coordinated sabotage. Signals along tracks were set on fire and cables were cut and satellites. The problems meant Sir Keir Starmer had to fly to Paris, where a short while ago he was greeted by French President Emmanuel Macron, as you can see on your screens now. Let's cross live to Paris now and speak with our reporter, Sophie Reaper. Sophie, welcome back to the show. So all the story, oh my God, it's the rain on the Seine. The heavens have opened there in Paris, Sophie Reaper. Of course, you're by the river there, Sophie, because the opening ceremony, unusually, is going to take part on that river behind you. It looks like it's as wet outside the river as it would be if you jumped in the river, Sophie Reaper. Tell us more.
Well, Martin, you join us as the heavens have just opened. About 2 minutes ago, it was perfectly pleasant here in this part of Paris along the Seine. But apparently that's just the way it goes with live TV. We've caught ourselves in a downpour, but no one here cares. There was a moment where everyone really looked at the heavens, saw the weather, donned their raincoats and moved on. Because, as you say, we are right by the River Seine. Now, Martin, I'll be honest with you, I'm not quite sure how we've managed to get so close. There are thousands of people vying to get to this position. We're in a specific press area, but there are maybe 50,000 people in the queue outside trying to get into this part of Paris, because this is the best seat in the house, I would say. I mean, in about 2 hours' time, we are going to see the delegates from 206 different countries make their way down the River Seine, here along to the Eiffel Tower and the Trocadero, where the opening ceremony will commence officially at 24 minutes past 8, which on a 24-hour clock reads as 2024. How fitting for the 2024 Paris Olympic Games. Now, in terms of what we're expecting to see, and we will be able to see them, by the way, because what a viewpoint we have got, around 10,500 athletes aboard just less than 100 boats, making their way down the River Seine. We're also potentially expecting to see Lady Gaga and Celine Dion. That's the rumour, that's the word on the street here in Paris. Celine Dion tweeting yesterday to tease to say she was here in the city of love. So who knows? There's rumours that she and Lady Gaga will perform a duet of Edith Piaf's La Vie en Rose, which, how spectacular and how fitting would that be as a start to the Paris Olympic Games. An incredible atmosphere, and I'm sure it's going to get even better. Despite the rain, what a place to be here in Paris.
Yeah, Sophie Reaper, Lady Gaga, that renowned French singer. And obviously the reason that you've got a ringside seat there, Sophie, is because GB News always says such nice things about Emmanuel Macron. They've given you the golden ticket. But on a serious point, back to the sport. Sophie, 327 athletes in Team GB taking part across 24 sports. We haven't talked an awful lot about the sport. We've been talking about the politics, about the disruption, but we've got some great sports to look forward to. Who do you think should be keeping an eye on in Team GB?
Oh, Martin, I've been waiting for that question all day. I'm a little bit of an Olympics buff. Well, tomorrow, for example, the men's gymnastics all-around qualification is going to begin, and interestingly, Max Whitlock is making his return to the gymnastics floor. But I think all eyes for Team GB will be on Jake Jarman. He is a relative newbie, but we actually saw him at the Birmingham Commonwealth Games a couple of years ago, where he absolutely dominated. Now, his sport is the vault. He's become quite the legend in the vault, but he's also incredible on the floor and incredible in the all-around. So I'm predicting maybe 1 or 2 gold medals for Jake Jarman. On the track, we have got a multitude of athletes who are looking to impress this time, namely Keely Hodgkinson, I would say, our 800-metre runner. At the Diamond League last weekend, she absolutely smashed her British record to take the gold, so all eyes will be on her, I think, in the coming weeks. But there's so many sports where we could do really well. We've got Andrea Spendolini-Siriex in the diving, Fred Siriex's daughter. She's been making waves, pardon the pun, in the diving pool. We've got Emily Campbell in the weightlifting. She's the best in the weightlifting that Team GB have ever had. We'll see Sky Brown go in the skateboarding on Sunday. We saw her take gold in Tokyo, one of the youngest ever athletes to take the gold in that in Team GB's history. So she'll be one to watch. There are so many. I've got my eye on the triathlon, Martin, because in the recent years, with the Brownlees legacy, they have done incredible things for the triathlon. And now we're seeing the likes of Alex Yee, Beth Potter. They're coming through, Georgia Taylor-Brown, all incredible athletes taking medals in the past few years, as well as at Tokyo. So I think the triathlon is one to watch. So I think that's plenty for our viewers to be sinking their teeth into. I could go on. There are so many people, and this is why I've been saying I think this could be a particularly good year for Team GB. Our best ever result came Rio 2016, 67 medals. We didn't do quite as well in Tokyo 2020, 64 medals, 22 gold, 20 silver, 22 bronze. But I think we could be looking at a bit of a gold medal haul this year. We've got lots of athletes coming in at peak performance. So I think this very well could be a good year for Team GB. So let's keep our fingers crossed and let's throw all of our support behind our athletes.
So, Reed, très bien, très bien. God, you Reed, you've had a gold medal there. You know you're in superb stuff. Don't get washed in the river, and we'll speak to you again later on. Sophie Reaper, gold medal winning performance there. Thank you very much. Now, Barack Obama has finally shown his hand and endorsed Kamala Harris's presidential bid. Took his time, but he's finally done it. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Your mother's story is, if you don't mind me saying, quite tragic. It touched me when I was reading it this morning, Myra, because she has now passed away and she hasn't been here to see kind of justice served, has she?
That's correct. She she died not knowing that she was correct, that Horizon was a flawed system.
And Myra, when you saw, I don't know whether you saw much of Sir Ed Davey during the election campaign, going down water slides, bungee jumping and bouncing around on sort of inflatables. Knowing that he played such a significant role in that difficult period of time with your mum, how did you react to those images?
I'm of the opinion that basically they're all as culpable as each other over all of the years. So I think basically every party had its failings. We knew Horizon was wrong, but nobody would believe us. Even the Postmasters Federation didn't help. They ended up speaking to my mother like she was a thief.
Are you still angry? And what do you want to see from Sir Ed Davey today?
Angry, yes, very angry. I've been furious throughout. Sir Ed Davey today, I know he will apologise. He's already done it. If he means what he says, he'll carry on campaigning to try and get proper redress from the compensation schemes from the thousands of us who still don't have our money. I was made an offer, the £70,000 that went missing, that they stole from us, they offered me 50 because that's all they could find in their records.
The People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 4:48. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Later in the show, I'll be joined by a genuine comedy legend who's going to take his brilliant act to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Believe me, you don't want to miss out on that. Now, former President Barack Obama and his wife Michelle have finally endorsed Kamala Harris to replace Joe Biden as the Democratic candidate for the US election. And let's see how it was announced.
Kamala.
Hello. Hi.
Hey there.
Oh, hi, you're both together. Oh, it's good to hear you both.
I can't have this phone call without saying to my girl Kamala, I am proud of you. This is going to be historic.
We called to say Michelle and I couldn't be prouder to endorse you and to do everything we can to get you through this election and into the Oval Office.
Oh, my goodness. Michelle, Barack, this means so much to me. I am looking forward to doing this with the two of you, Doug and I both, and getting out there, being on the road. But most of all, I just want to tell you the words you have spoken and the friendship that you have given over all these years mean more than I can express. So thank you both. It means so much. And we're going to have some fun with this too, aren't we?
What a great stroke of fortune that somebody was on hand to film it. Now, joining me now is the US and international politics professor, Scott Lucas. Scott, welcome to the show. Always a pleasure. So they took their time, but the anointment came finally from Barack Obama and Michelle Obama. How significant do you think that is?
Significant, but it's all part of what has been a significant process since Sunday. And trust me, the Obamas were going to endorse Kamala Harris. This just simply was set up to be the end of this. So you move from Joe Biden dropping out and endorsing Kamala Harris, other heavyweight Democrats from the center of the party to progressives endorsing, other potential challengers stepping aside and endorsing Harris. And then you build up all the way through Nancy Pelosi, former House Speaker, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, and then the Obamas. Because the Democrats have got a double message here. And it's a double message of unity. Unity within the party, and then unity for America, that America needs to unify given the threat to democracy that Donald Trump represents in November.
And Scott, the Obamas have endorsed Kamala Harris. The Clintons have endorsed Kamala Harris. She's even got the soundtrack from Beyonce, the Freedom track. That's the same as in 2016. The same people backed Hillary Clinton then. Do you think, and they couldn't beat Donald Trump that time around, do you think there'll be a difference this time around, or will history repeat itself? The polling seems to favour Donald Trump still.
Polling's actually neck and neck. If you take, for example, the national polling, Joe Biden had dropped about 5-6 points behind Trump. The New York Times Siena poll that just came out, Harris is only 1 point behind. The latest swing state polls, in those 7 or 8 states we got to pay attention to, Harris is closing the gap rapidly. I mean, this race is a top-up to start off with. In terms of 2016, Kamala Harris isn't Hillary Clinton. And I think there's 3 things to watch out for here. The first is Kamala Harris is tough. She will push back, as we have already seen this week, against Trump's rhetoric. So Trump can't bully her like he literally stalked Hillary Clinton across the debate stage in 2016. Secondly, Hillary Clinton didn't poll well with certain groups in the states. That included women. Quite a few just didn't like her personality or approach. Kamala Harris does quite well with women voters, which leads to the third point. Kamala Harris is probably going to be able to get Democrats out who didn't vote in 2016, women, youth, suburban voters. And a key here is she's a prosecutor running against a convicted felon. So this isn't 2016 when the Democrats lost. This isn't 2020 when the Democrats won. This is a race to be taken in terms of what is very different about it this time around.
But Scott, don't you think the voters you just rattled off there, they're already Democratic voters? Do you think Kamala Harris can really cut through, like in the Rust Belt, the working class voters, the swing state voters in those states where the Democrats have to win? They won't be wooed by her liberal politics, will they?
Well, first of all, I mean, you talk about a state like Pennsylvania, you take a state like Michigan and so on. You know, those states, in fact, have Democratic governments. So they've got white working classes, but they do also have Democrats who are at the highest parts of state government. So the idea that Kamala Harris is a liberal and all the white working class is conservative, that's more of a myth that's sort of thrown out there by the media. I think the big thing is this, that when the Democrats lost in 2016, and the difference from when they won in 2020 wasn't that Donald Trump surged necessarily amongst those white working class voters. It's that Democratic voters or independent voters sat on their hands. They didn't turn out for the Democrats. Key here is voter turnout. If Trump can turn out not just his base, but get undecided voters to vote for him, then he wins. If Kamala Harris gets those undecided voters in the center, plus Democrats who really didn't think Joe Biden was going to win, then she's going to take this race.
Fascinating stuff, as ever. Thank you very much for joining us, Scott Luca. It's always a pleasure to have your expertise on the show. Thank you. Now, there's chaos in France just a few hours before the Olympics opening ceremony. Arson attacks have paralysed the country's rail network. We're across live for all of the latest. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel. But before all of that, it's your weather with Alex Deakin.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Afternoon, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A mix of sun and showers today, but much of the south staying fine into this evening. A few livelier showers further north and west, weather fronts here, and low pressure sitting just to the south of Iceland. That's generating the showers, but further south, I say most places staying dry. Just one or two drifting in across southwest England, but much of eastern England having clear spells through the evening. And the showers elsewhere will tend to fade away this evening as well, so many will have a dry night. Later in the night, the clouds thickening up again and some wetter weather returning to northwest England and southwest Scotland. With clearer spells, it'll be a pretty chilly night, actually, because certainly compared to earlier in the week, temperatures in some rural spots down to single figures. Generally a fine start to the weekend. The main exception to that will be far south of Scotland and northwest England. One or two showers coming into Wales and the southwest early on, but generally it'll be a dry and a sunny start. There's that wetter weather, not great across the lakes early on and the far south of Scotland. A few showers in the south of Northern Ireland too, and across the Highlands of Scotland. But again, a good part of central and northern Scotland will start the weekend dry and sunny. And overall, a drier day tomorrow across the west coast of Scotland compared to today. That heavier rain, though, over northern England and southern Scotland will tend to shift, and it'll break up a little bit, so it won't be cloudy all day. There'll be some sunny spells, but some heavier showers in this zone across the Midlands, Wales and northeast England into the afternoon. The odd rumble of thunder is possible. Much of the southeast staying dry. As I said, a drier day for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Feeling warm in the sunshine, cooling off when the downpours come along. And there'll still be quite a few of those heavy showers over England and Wales during Saturday evening, eastern Scotland also, but they should tend to fade away and disappear for Sunday, because Sunday looks like a fine day by and large, generally fine and sunny, and signs of something a bit hotter into next week.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm John Vincent. Delays on the M62 westbound in West Yorkshire due to an earlier accident at junction 23 Huddersfield. Slow for the M6 southbound in the West Midlands due to an earlier accident involving two cars at junction 10 Wolverhampton. Long delays on the M25 anti-clockwise in Kent. There's a lane closed for recovery work for a broken down car just before the Dartford tunnels. Slow for the M4 westbound in Berkshire due to an earlier broken down vehicle between junction 13 Chieveley and 14 for Hungerford. Queues on the M25 anti-clockwise in Leatherhead. There's a lane closed for a broken down car just before junction 9 Leatherhead. And we're seeing slow traffic on the M5 southbound in Devon. There's a lane closed on the exit slip road due to a broken down vehicle at junction 30, the Exeter service area. And that's the latest traffic and travel news.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Don't miss your chance to win our Super Summer Giveaway. With your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date. Which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes,
She could have said stump.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
A very good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News. We're broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster, all across the UK. On today's show, there's absolute chaos in France on the day that the Paris Olympics are officially open. The rail network has been paralysed by arson attacks in what's been called coordinated sabotage. It's affecting Brits trying to get to the continent, with 1 in 4 Eurostar trains being cancelled today and indeed over the rest of the weekend. And GB News can exclusively reveal the true extent of the EU's soft touch deportation system. While 4.25 million immigrants entered the European Union illegally between 2019 and 2023, a tiny 2.4% were actually deported, and over 130,000 of them have made their way into the United Kingdom. And stand by to hear from a genuine comedy legend. Bobby Davro will join me as he gets ready to perform at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival later this year. That's all coming up in your next hour. Well, it's a show, always a pleasure to have your company. Well, the Olympics is meant to bring the world together, and so far it's done anything but that. For weeks now, there have been increased security threats on the streets, 40,000 security guards, 10,000 soldiers, and now a coordinated attack network on the railway system, and the blame game is just beginning. After the news headlines, we'll go into who may be responsible. All sorts of malign influencers are being named. They're trying to stop the greatest sporting show on earth. Will that happen? Send your views and post your comments by going to gbnews.com/YourSaber. Now it's your headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good evening to you. It's just after 5 o'clock and the top story tonight. The police watchdog has launched a criminal investigation into an officer who was filmed kicking and stamping on a man's head at Manchester Airport. The IOPC is now looking into whether his use of force was acceptable. 3 armed police were seriously injured as they attended to reports of an assault which happened before the events seen in this video, which has now been shared widely online. Earlier, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, said that after 2 nights of protests over that incident, he wants to see calm restored and appealed for politicians not to exploit the public's anger. In France, people travelling to the Paris Olympics are being warned of massive consequences after vandals targeted the rail network. Coordinated arson attacks on the high-speed lines have also crippled Eurostar, with 1 in 4 services cancelled. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer was forced to change his travel plans today, taking a flight to Paris instead of a train. It's not known who was behind the vandalism or why. The disruption comes just hours ahead of tonight's official start of the Paris Olympics. Here, a rapist who threw a boy off a cliff to try and cover up his crimes has been sentenced to life in prison. Anthony Stocks raped and sexually assaulted a girl multiple times between 2019 and 2022. When she confided in a boy, Stocks threw him off a cliff. Miraculously, he survived, though he continues to suffer ongoing health issues. Stocks was convicted of a number of crimes, including attempted murder and rape. He'll now spend at least 19 years behind bars. Drivers are still paying too much for petrol amid warnings that the industry is failing consumers. The Competition and Markets Authority issued a report last year that found fuel prices were significantly above historic levels. But a year on, it's seen little progress and says retailers are still failing to pass on a drop in wholesale prices to motorists. It says the government should use new laws to force companies to be more transparent about their pricing. And it comes as the margin of petrol at supermarkets remains roughly double what it was in 2019. The Health Secretary has called the NHS broken following a report into the regulator that oversees care services across the country. An independent reviews found significant failings at the Care Quality Commission. The CQC inspects around 90,000 services, including hospitals and GP practices. The regulator says it accepts the findings, but Wes Streeting told us earlier he's still stunned.
There are, cases of hospitals not being inspected for over a decade, a care provider that hadn't been inspected since 2015, and even the ratings that are published and that we use as the public to make choices about where to receive health or care, some of those are frankly bogus because of the way in which they've been put together based on either partial inspections or piecing together more recent inspections with historic verdicts on those health and care providers.
Wes Streeting there speaking to us earlier on GB News. Well, Mel Stride has become the 4th Conservative MP to now enter the race to become the party's next leader. The Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary joins James Cleverly, Tom Tugendhat and Robert Jenrick in the contest to take over from Rishi Sunak. He says the Tories should avoid veering too far to the right, though, and focus on unity. Turning to Australia now, where doctors are working to reattach a surfer's leg after he was attacked by a shark. Kai McKenzie, who's 23, was surfing near Port Macquarie on Tuesday morning, that's about 250 miles from Sydney, when he was bitten by a 3-metre-long great white shark. He managed to catch a wave to shore, though, where an off-duty police officer helped him to stem the bleeding. And then, in an extraordinary twist, his severed leg later washed ashore and was put on ice by quick-thinking locals. Doctors are now working to see whether it can be reattached. And finally to the US, where the first TV ad for Kamala Harris's presidential bid has just hit the screens. Have a listen.
We choose freedom.
Well, featuring that soundtrack by Beyoncé, who gave her blessing to the Vice President, the ad touches on gun violence, healthcare and abortion, while casting Donald Trump as a convicted criminal. It comes after Ms Harris was endorsed by Barack Obama earlier today, who said he'd do everything he can to put her in the White House. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis. Your next update from the newsroom in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Sam. Now, of course, there's only one place to start this afternoon, and that's the absolute bedlam in France on the day that the Olympic Games are officially opening. The Olympics are under attack, with the French high-speed rail network left paralysed following a series of arson attacks. In what's been described as coordinated sabotage, signals along tracks were set on fire and cables were cut and set alight. And the problems affected Eurostar and meant that Sir Keir Starmer had to fly to Paris, where he was greeted by French President Emmanuel Macron, as you can see pictures on your screen now. Well, to discuss this, I'm joined by our Homeland Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, welcome back to the show. Mark, a very fast-moving story in the past hour. The French Prime Minister has said that the people who did this, they knew where to hit. They had knowledge of the network and they're expecting more attacks. But, Mark, do we know anything yet about who may be responsible for these attacks?
No, the Interior Minister, Gerald Darmanin, has been speaking as well, saying that they hope to make arrests at the earliest possible opportunity, but no indication that they know exactly who they're after at this stage. And there have been, of course, multiple reports coming out about who might be responsible. Reports early on that top of the list is the Russians, and then we got reports coming out of Israel that perhaps the information that they're receiving suggests it was Islamist related. And then NBC, the news network in the States, have been quoting official sources in the US who say that information they've received from the French would suggest that perhaps it was anarchist groups or far left groups. So we just simply don't know at this stage, except clearly that information, as confirmed by the acting Prime Minister, that the attacks that took place were coordinated. It was a massive attack on multiple locations, and they knew exactly what to target. They had knowledge of the rail network and what would effectively paralyse the rail network. And these attacks took place well outside Paris, one almost 100 miles south of Paris. But in targeting these signal boxes and the cable networks that run alongside the rail tracks, they knew, of course, that they would cripple the communications, the ability of the network coordinators to be able to run trains on these lines, and that's exactly what happened. And only now are some services starting to resume, but not without very significant delays.
Yeah, and just to add, the rail chief of SNCF said it was une bande de luminés, which is French for a gang of lunatics. And when we know more, we'll give you more information. Mark White, thank you for joining us. Always a pleasure. Thank you. Now, the Olympics will officially open later today if all goes according to plan. Let's cross to Paris now live and speak with our reporter, Sophie Reaper. Sophie, welcome back to the show. The rain has finally stopped. The last time we had you on, it was absolutely tipping it down. The gods, it seems, are in the favour of these Olympics getting underway, even if these malign agents aren't. That river behind you, of course, Sophie, that's where the ceremony is taking place in a couple of hours' time. You've got ringside seats. Tell us more.
Well, I said to you, didn't I, in the last hour, Martin, that the rain had suddenly just started, a deluge, as we began our live. And it's been exactly the same. All of a sudden, the rain just stopped. And the umbrellas went down and the raincoats came off. And we're all now drying out and we're getting ready. We are now just over an hour away from that opening ceremony beginning. As you rightly say, it's going to be taking place here behind me. Now, it's going to start about 6 kilometres upstream at the Austerlitz Bridge. That's where the athletes, around 10,500 athletes, will board those boats and they will make the journey, those 6 kilometres down. There will be hundreds of thousands of people on the banks of the Seine watching them that you may not be able to see over my shoulder. There is some seating that you could purchase, and those tickets range from around €90 to €2,700. So you've got to be a really big Olympics fan if you're willing to pay that kind of money for a seat. Once those boats make their way down here, they will reach us right at the end at the Eiffel Tower and over the bank at the Trocadero. That is where Paris 2024 will officially commence. The torch will be lit. We still don't know who's going to be doing that. That's always kept a secret until the very last minute. But that will be it. Paris 2024 will be underway. And what a spectacle we are expecting. We've got 2.5 weeks jam-packed with events. So many sports, so many athletes, so much to look forward to, and we'll be bringing you all the latest, not just from the opening ceremony, but over the coming days here in Paris.
And Sophie Reaper, I know that you're a lady of many talents, but I didn't know your mastermind chosen subject was British Olympians. So for those who missed it last time, your gold medal winning performance, who are the Brits to keep an eye on?
Well, let me try and think of some other ones to talk about then if we're going to do this again, Martin. In the swimming, I had Mark Foster join me earlier in Good Afternoon Britain. He, of course, one of the best British swimmers of all time, and we were talking about some people to watch in the pool. Now, Adam Peaty is going to be making his return. He, of course, a phenomenal athlete, and Mark Foster said that he thinks that he has a good chance in the 100-metre breaststroke to take, if not the gold, then certainly a medal. He, of course, the world record holder in that event. He'll be taken to the pool in the qualifying rounds of that event tomorrow morning. So we'll be outside the Aquatic Centre bringing you all the latest on that. So many other events to talk about. There are a couple of events that surprisingly Team GB aren't actually competing in this year. Of course, we know we never really compete in the football because, as we know, this is Team GB. It's not England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. We all come together for the Olympics. So we never traditionally compete in the football, the exception, of course, at London 2012. There are a couple of events as well that we're not competing in this year. The basketball, for example, the fencing. We haven't really got anyone in the fencing. So that's come as a bit of a surprise. But I think we're going to make up for it elsewhere. We've got a new sport this year. We've got the breaking. That's going to be very interesting to see our athletes compete in that particular event. We've never seen the likes of it before. But as Mark Foster so rightly said earlier, it's about moving with the times. And he said that that's what the young people are interested in these days. So that'll be a very interesting one for people to take note of. Also, the martial arts. Bradley Sinden's going to go in the taekwondo. Chelsea Giles in the judo. These are all names that people should become very familiar with because it's likely that they could be bringing home the gold, or certainly medals anyway. Which, fun fact for you this, Martin, the medals for Paris 2024 will actually contain a small bit of iron from the original Eiffel Tower. How special is that for those people who get to keep those medals and know that it's got a little bit of the Eiffel Tower inside it? But let's hope as many as possible of Team GB are taking home those medals with them. We're going to be right behind them. We are GB News, so of course Team GB is our main priority and we're going to be giving them all our support throughout the Paris 2024.
Sophie Reaper, you have scored 31 points and you are GB News' mastermind champion. Excellent stuff. Thanks for cheering us up. It's been a grim day about all the security alerts. Thank you for bringing a smile to our faces there from the banks of the River Seine. Sophie Reaper, superb stuff. They got lots more on that huge story on our website. And thanks to you, GBNews.com is the fastest growing national news website in the country. It's got breaking news and all the brilliant analysis you've come to expect from us here at GB News. Now, there's still plenty of time to grab your chance to win £30,000 in the Great British Giveaway. It's our biggest cash prize of the year and it's totally tax-free. Now, what would you do with all that extra cash? Well, here's how you could win it all.
Don't miss your chance to win our Super Summer Giveaway. With your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date, which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 £2 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, stand by for another GB News exclusive report that shows that less than 3% of the 4.25 million illegal immigrants were deported from the European Union in 5 years. It's an astonishing report, and that's next. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
No, it wasn't just us who celebrated the big football match on Saturday. Prince William was in the crowd in Dusseldorf and couldn't help but show his relief when England scored.
And over the weekend, it was also announced that the Prince of Wales is set to star in a new two-part documentary on ITV covering his mission to try and eradicate homelessness.
Well, let's talk about this and much, much more with Angela Levin, royal biographer, who joins us in the studio. I'm glad to hear that this documentary's been made, Angela, because I worried that he made this big announcement about homelessness, and I thought, goodness me, here is somebody who could maybe do something about this. And then it's all seemed to have gone quiet.
He's been very busy with it, actually. He's gone all over the country to see different areas and how they have been, and to try and change people's attitude to homelessness, that they're people who need help and want to get back into a normal life. I think it was 2009, he slept out in the street to see for himself what it was like. And he also helped people who are selling the magazines, the big issue. So I think he was actually just covering the basic about what it was like for him and how he can now help other people. He and Catherine are putting £3 million straight away into that, and it's going to
Where
be...
does that money come from?
Their own foundation, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so they're not taking it from our tax or anybody else's. He wants to do this so badly because of his mother. You know, she took them to see people who were homeless, and even if he can't do everyone, he can help people be kind and understanding.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 5:21. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, the NHS is urging blood donors to come forward amid an urgent shortage of certain blood types. Let's cross the donation centre in West London now and join our national reporter, Charlie Peters. Charlie.
The NHS has made an urgent appeal for more blood donors to come forward after an unprecedentedly low level of stocks, particularly of O-type blood groups. We have just 1.6 days remaining of O-negative blood types in the NHS after a cyber attack last month hit our pathology centre in London, reducing capacity for the NHS to carry out blood checks and make sure that the right blood is being used for the right patient. O-negative is the universal donor blood group, but just 8% of the population have it, with 16% of blood donations in the NHS using that group. It is in urgent demand. Well, here in Westfield, in Shepherd's Bush, at a donor centre, it's been busy all morning as people came in to make sure that they were part of this drive, with the NHS having an additional 10,000 slots for donations in the coming weeks as they try to raise those stocks. Earlier today, I spoke with a donor and a nurse about what's going on here amid this national urgent appeal.
Please don't be scared. Give it a try. I would say anything in life, just give it a try first. And if you don't like it at the end of the day, we understand. At least you know in your heart you give it a try. So I would say, don't be scared. Come in.
I think it's probably the only physical thing you can do that helps other people, really. And you know, that's my drive, really. That I can maybe someone suffering somewhere needs blood, and I'm able to donate quite easily.
The NHS has issued an amber warning, which means the hospitals should only use the O blood groups if they know it's an essential or emergency practice that needs to be carried out. But in the meantime, they need more people to come forward with O positive or O negative blood types to ensure they can help replenish those stocks. And in just 10 minutes, you can help save a life.
Now, to an absolutely shocking new report on illegal immigration in the European Union. Just 2.4% of the EU's 4.25 million illegal immigrants were deported in 5 years. Just over 2 million people were ordered to leave, as you can see on your screens, between 2019 and 2023. However, just 101,000 illegal immigrants were actually removed from the European Union, a paltry, piffling amount. Now, in that time, 130,000 illegal migrants, of course, came to the United Kingdom in small boats. Now, the report was compiled by facts4eu.org, and joining me now is its chairman, Lee Evans. Lee, welcome to the show. An incredible report. It's the fourth one you've exclusively given to us here at GBNews. Thank you very much for doing that. And in many ways, Lee, this is simply the most astonishing of all. Tell us more.
Yeah, I mean, we, as you rightly say, we've run a series of reports on population and migration, and how that impacts the UK. So looking at it from where's the source of our small boat migrant problem? Well, we know it's the EU and more specifically France. So it seemed reasonable to look at this pool of people and what the EU is doing about it. And what we've shown in previous reports is that the EU is failing to secure its borders. The numbers keep on rising year after year, whether you look at illegal migrants that are detected within the EU or those that actually apply formally through the asylum system. The numbers are growing fast. And the implication for the UK is the more of these migrants there are in the EU, the more are likely to head for the northern French coast and across to the UK. So it's directly relevant to us how the EU is doing. And in our final report, we looked at how many they were deporting. Now, I have to put a caveat on this. The EU's data is not particularly reliable on this particular subject, so we've just used what they had. And you've reported correctly the numbers. A staggeringly few migrants are actually deported each year. And what happens to these people? Well, they're loose within the EU. A lot of them are not within the system. And of course, a lot of them are heading for the northern French coast. And we've seen this because we're now experiencing the largest number of illegal migrants so far this year on record since records began in 2018.
And Lee, you mentioned so many great points in this report. Of course, if 2.4% are being deported, that means that 97.6% aren't being deported. They might receive visas, or they might just wander around the continent, entering the black economy, or, of course, heading to the French coast. And you make the point again, we have no idea who these people are. We have no idea if they have criminal records. We have no idea if they have any links to terrorism. And they're able, thanks to open borders, to simply wander anywhere they like. And that could mean those beaches in northern France. Next stop, the United Kingdom.
Yeah, and one of the points that we made in our final report, I think is quite important, Martin, and it's this. The public expect the United Kingdom government to defend us. Defence of the realm is actually the #1 duty of any UK government. And here we are with, we revealed exclusively on Monday on GB News that the number since records began has now surpassed 130,000. Now, that may not sound a lot when compared with legal migration, but of course, as you quite rightly said,
Okay, I think we lost Lee Evans there, unfortunately. But let me just fill in some of the details there from that report. It's just simply staggering stuff. When you look at 4 million, over 4 million going to the European Union between 2019 and 2023, 4.25 million illegal migrants detected. Let's get those graphics back on the screen again, because they really, really make this point with absolute clarity. 4.25 million arrive illegally. This is not legally, illegally. So these come in boats to the European Union member state shores. And of that number, you can see the right-hand bar on that graph there. Those are the ones detected who were asked to leave and didn't. I think we've re-established comms now with Lee Evans. Lee, you're building up to the point of the fact that this becomes a very, very British problem.
Yes, and crucially, it's a security problem. And the point that I was trying to make was that the #1 responsibility of any UK government is the defence of the realm. And that clearly isn't happening because, as we revealed exclusively on Monday on GB News, the figure had just broken 130,000 illegal migrants. And as I was saying, this may not sound a lot compared to the millions coming legally, but the difference is this: we don't know who these people are. They could be criminals, they could be terrorists, we have no idea. And therefore, it is a clear and present danger, we would suggest, to the UK's security.
And so, Lee, quickly, if we could, if we're talking about doing some kind of deal with the European Union, a returns deal, that seems to be the direction of travel that Sir Keir Starmer's government would want. How can we reasonably do a deal with a European Union that can't control its own borders, that has 2 million illegal migrants simply strolling around the continent, and they have no idea who any of them are?
Correct. And we would say quite simply that what is on offer from the EU is wholly unacceptable. We don't want to be part of their migration pact, which would then mean us taking a proportion, naturally, of their illegal migrants. So we don't want that. What we want is robust action from the government to say to the EU, and specifically to President Macron, enough is enough. We've had 6 years of this, and it's got to stop. And you've got to do something about it. We're not going to do some backroom fudge deal which involves us getting even more people. You simply have to take your migrants back, and that's that. So we would recommend a very robust approach. We think anything other than that in negotiating with the EU is frankly naive.
And all of this, Lee, sends out a message to the people smugglers, to the traffickers, that the European Union is open for business. Its borders are porous, it's an easy target, and then you're simply free to wander towards Britain.
That's it. And we know, as we said in one of our reports recently, the two main countries, destination countries, desired by these migrants are Germany and the UK. And why the UK? Because, frankly, we're a soft touch. Why wouldn't you come to the UK? You get money every week. You get food and lodging. you get a free iPhone, you don't have to work. Relatively speaking, it's a nice life. And when you think about where these migrants have come from camps, from tents, very mucky environment on the northern French coast, it must seem like heaven when they arrive in the UK.
OK, Lee Evans, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us. A series of excellent reports you've very kindly given to us exclusively here at GB News, facts4eu.org. Lee Evans, thank you very much for joining us on the show. Always a pleasure. Thank you. Now, still loads more to come between now and 6 o'clock with the Olympics opening ceremony taking place this evening. I'll talk about which Team GB athletes could strike gold in Paris. But first, it's your headlines with Sam Francis.
"5:32, the top story from the newsroom tonight. People travelling to the Paris Olympics are experiencing massive delays after vandals targeted the rail network. Coordinated arson attacks on high-speed lines have also crippled Eurostar, with 1 in 4 services cancelled. It's not known who was behind the vandalism or why. The disruption comes just hours ahead of the official start of tonight's Paris Olympics. Here, the police watchdog has launched a criminal investigation into an officer who was filmed kicking and stamping on a man's head at Manchester Airport. 3 armed police were seriously injured as they attended to reports of an assault which happened before the events seen in a video which has been widely shared online. There have been widespread protests too following that incident on Tuesday, with demonstrators blocking tram lines and the city's roads. The IOPC is now looking into whether the use of force was acceptable. A rapist who threw a boy off a cliff to try to cover up his crimes has been sentenced to life in prison. Anthony Stocks raped and sexually assaulted a girl multiple times between 2019 and 2022. When she confided in a boy, Stocks threw him off a cliff. Miraculously, he survived, but continues to suffer ongoing health issues. Stocks was convicted of a number of crimes, including attempted murder and rape. He'll now spend at least 19 years behind bars. An alternative healer has been found guilty of gross negligence manslaughter following the death of a woman at a slapping therapy workshop. Hongqi Zhao, who has no medical qualifications, preached the benefits of hitting yourself to rid the body of toxins. Danielle Carr-Gomes stopped taking her diabetes medication after going to one of his seminars in Wiltshire and died in 2016. And Ted Baker is understood to be preparing to close all of its shops within weeks. The owner of the fashion brand went into administration in March and shut 15 branches. It's thought the remainder of its stores will now disappear from the high street, with nearly 1,000 staff to lose their jobs. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis. Back at 6 o'clock. Next, though, a look at the markets.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a last look at the markets for you tonight. The pound will buy you $1.2867 and €1.1846. The price of gold, £1,856.16 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 has closed the day at 8,285 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Sam. Now, if you want to get in touch with us here at GB News, simply go to gbnews.com/you'll hundreds of comments so far, loads on the Manchester police officer. I'll read a few of those out before the end of the show. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Afternoon, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A mix of sun and showers today, but much of the south staying fine into this evening. A few livelier showers further north and west, weather fronts here, and low pressure sitting just to the south of Iceland. That's generating the showers, but further south, I say most places staying dry. Just 1 or 2 drifting in across southwest England, but much of eastern England having clear spells through the evening. And the showers elsewhere will tend to fade away this evening as well, so many will have a dry night. Later in the night, the clouds thickening up again and some wetter weather returning to northwest England and southwest Scotland. With clearer spells, it'll be a pretty chilly night, actually, because certainly compared to earlier in the week, temperatures in some rural spots down to single figures. Generally a fine start to the weekend. The main exception to that will be far south of Scotland and northwest England. 1 or 2 showers coming into Wales and the southwest early on, but generally it'll be a dry and a sunny start. There's that wetter weather, not great across the lakes early on and the far south of Scotland. A few showers in the south of Northern Ireland too, and across the Highlands of Scotland. But again, a good part of central and northern Scotland will start the weekend dry and sunny. And overall, a drier day tomorrow across the west coast of Scotland compared to today. That heavier rain, though, over northern England and southern Scotland will tend to shift, and it'll break up a little bit, so it won't be cloudy all day. There'll be some sunny spells, but some heavier showers in this zone across the Midlands, Wales and northeast England into the afternoon. The odd rumble of thunder is possible. Much of the southeast staying dry. As I said, a drier day for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Feeling warm in the sunshine, cooling off when the downpours come along. And there'll still be quite a few of those heavy showers over England and Wales during Saturday evening, eastern Scotland also, but they should tend to fade away and disappear for Sunday, because Sunday looks like a fine day by and large, generally fine and sunny, and signs of something a bit hotter into next week.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Gary King in Kent. The coastbound M20, there's a lane closed and delays at the moment after an accident around junction 8 at Leeds Castle. In Surrey, the anti-clockwise M25, 2 lanes closed, long delays after a breakdown just before junction 9 at Leatherhead. Delays though back towards junction 10 at the A3. In Berkshire, the westbound M4 looking busy after an earlier accident around junction 13 at Cheveley. In Devon, the southbound M5 looking very busy. There's a lane closed on the exit Slip Road at junction 30 at Exeter following a breakdown. In Cheshire, the northbound M6, there are 2 lanes closed and delays after a broken down lorry. It's northbound between junction 18 at Holmes Chapel towards junction 19 at Knutsford. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes, she could have said storm.
You made my argument for me. My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
It went everywhere. Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, 5:39. It's the final furlong. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, amongst all of the chaos before the start of the opening ceremony in Paris, GB News wants to wish all of the British athletes the very, very best of golden luck. Very good luck to you. But how successful will they be? Well, let's talk about the Brits who've got the best chance of bringing home a medal now with Chris Scudder, the sports broadcaster last spoken to at the European Championships. And Scuds, you were positive there, full of vitality, and you proved me totally wrong. Now then, we've had loads of chaos today about the rail networks. Is it ISIS? Is it the Russians? Is it anarchists? Let's push that to one side, focus on some good news. Who are the Brits that we should be keeping a beady eye on?
I think some of the veterans, Martin. It's a fascinating games, this. I mean, you talk about, it's so disappointing, wasn't it, England not winning in the football? But, the Olympics, ever since that nightmare in Atlanta 1996 when Britain got 1 gold medal, finished a pathetic 36th in the world. Ever since then, the lottery money, the funding has gone up and up and up. It's costing about 300 million this time. But the results have been there. The last 3 games, Britain have finished in the top 4th, 2nd and 3rd. And I think they've certainly got their eyes set on finishing the top 3 this time. No reason why that shouldn't happen. I think they'll finish. 3rd last time was in Japan, in Tokyo was Japan. They won't finish as high as the Brits this time. I think they'll finish in the top 3, obviously behind the USA, who are the best funded of the lot. China as well, massive. But then GB, really. And I think some of the veterans, you look at people like Tom Daley, who's carrying the flag tonight. Andy Murray, can he get a 4th Olympic medal? Adam Peaty's back in the swimming. Some huge names, really. Helen Glover in the rowing. Endless list. Max Whitlock in the gymnastics. All who have done it before. Some have retired and come out as well and come back this time. They really want it. It's a big national celebration, this, and there's every reason to think there's going to be a lot of success the next couple of weeks.
And as well as some of those names that we're more familiar with, your Dailies and your Murrays, what about some of the names that might be a bit less familiar? What kind of events should we be keeping them peeled for?
Yeah, there's always the Olympics changes every time, doesn't it? You got surfing this time. It's taking place not in Paris but Tahiti, believe it or not. What's all that about? 9,500 miles away. Here's one for you. The skateboarding. That's not been an Olympic thing for very long, has it? Sky Brown. Remember her in Tokyo? She was 13 and got a medal. She's 16 now. In fact, she wanted to be in the surfing as well, but she's going to take part in the skateboarding at the age of 16. I think she's got a great chance of a medal. There's a young diver. Remember, Fred Sirex, he was on I'm a Celebrity. Yeah. His daughter's a diver. She's, I think, 19. I interviewed her a few weeks ago. Lovely girl. She's got a great chance as well. So there's always, canoeing, shooting, all these sports that every 4 years people suddenly go, yeah, I remember him from last time or her. And they always deliver. And with, a huge team, Britain have got 327 athletes, costing, 300 million quid pretty much. They are very well funded, very well backed, and very well prepared. They should do very well.
And of course, her dad, Fred, he got a gold medal himself for moaning about Brexit in the jungle when he was with Nigel Farage. Yeah. Put that to one side. Do you think
at least his daughter's for Britain, not France? That's a good news, isn't it?
Yeah, they might stick in the craw for him a bit. But look, there's been a bit of a cloud over proceedings, got to say. We're talking constantly about the fact that 600,000 tickets have been unsold. We had Olympic athletes in the studio here earlier on, Chris. Do you think they have to do something about that? Because what we don't want to see, what the athletes don't want to hear, are those half-empty stadiums where it's echoing around. You can hear a crisp packet fall. We want packed stadiums, but they're charging like €6,000 for a blooming ticket, Chris. There's no wonder people aren't rushing to it.
It's not just the Olympics, the football as well. The costs are ridiculous. They always have been. I can remember 12 years ago now in London, 2012. I went to some events, took my kids, and it cost a fortune to go to things like gymnastics, rowing. Really was expensive. I know there'll be a lot of people trying to get to Paris tonight. I think there are about 250 British police as well going over to just help out. Big international presence as well. It's a huge event. I mean, we talk about the Football World Cup and the Euros. Those are, in terms of interest, massive events. But in terms of the logistics, there's nothing quite like the Olympics. It is vast. 10,000 athletes, all the teams that come with that, all the people that travel as well. And that's why Paris is pretty much locked down today. And it will be tonight for the opening ceremony, despite all the problems and all the rest of it. And for the next 2 weeks, it's just a huge event.
OK, Chris Scudder, thank you for joining us. Thanks for being positive. As ever, you were about the football, you're about this, and let's hope that helps us to bring home some medals. Chris Scudder, always a pleasure. All the best, mate. Cheers. Now, don't go anywhere, because I'm about to be joined by absolute comedy gold himself, Bobby Davro, who's going to take the Edinburgh Fringe Festival by storm this summer. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Football and gambling can go hand in hand and cause long-term problems. New figures show that young adults aged between 16 and 24 who have bet over the last year are more likely to report mental health issues compared to those in older age groups.
And joining us now to discuss this is Matt Burgess, who is a former gambling addict and now helps those to deal with their own gambling issues.
Yeah, I think gambling is one of those things that is so accessible now. Everyone's got a kind of mobile phone in their pocket, walk around with a kind of 24-hour casino, if you like. So I think it's really important that people realise that we have to sort of recognise that that is a month of quite condensed gambling, and we don't want people to sort of carry that on into their everyday life, because that's when it can become really risky and you know, it can become addictive.
I had no idea, though, that it was linked to first-time gambling. For the first time, people might be able to pick up and have a go. And then it doesn't end there. It goes on, because by then you've got the bug. Is that how it works?
You've got to remember, for things like the Euros, the World Cup, so you get a lot more people watching football and therefore potentially betting on football.
May I ask you about how severe your own gambling addiction got?
Well, look, I think there was a couple of touch points for me where I realised that things were getting out of hand. There were some times at university where, you know, I kind of thought, you know, I'm definitely doing this a bit too much, but, you know, kind of thought maybe it would move on once I left, but it didn't. It did follow me. And then, you know, I got to points where I was at my worst gambling 16, 17 hours a day. I was spending huge amounts of money. It can spiral out of control very, very quickly, and that was the important thing that we want to highlight is, you know, what can start as fun can become very, very dangerous in a sense.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Go and get another glass of that bubbly, you've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan.
GB News royalty with
your perfect start to the weekend.
Lucky us.
Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions.
That raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return.
And a few surprises along the way.
Might be cold in this studio.
That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 5:48. We're on the final furlong. Now, I've had hundreds of your says coming into the show so far. Let's run through a few of those now. And the topic that's really captured your imagination once again is the police officer in Manchester who is now under investigation, under a criminal investigation for his actions at the airport. We have some footage of that. Of course, you'd have seen that. Peter says this: when the police get investigated and the perpetrator is set free, when we have a solicitor who is going for compensation, and no doubt we'll get it, well, don't be surprised when we get mob rule. Janet adds this: would there be anywhere near as much fuss if these lads were called Darren and Gary? I think not. There will be no riots, just like there were no riots when the soldier was stabbed the other day or when Lee Rigby was killed. The riots only seem to be from one side. Nuna adds this: that copper is a bully and a coward. He should be done for GBH. Well, Nuna, he's not under a criminal investigation, under arrest as such. He's going to be investigated, as Mary says in this next excellent point here. The police officer is under investigation. That doesn't mean that he will be charged. So what about the thugs that broke a woman officer's nose and attacked another police officer? What will be done with them? We need to see the full evidence, because until we do, we only have our half the picture, and this story is going in the wrong direction. James adds this: we have police officers violently attacked and hospitalised, with an armed officer detaining the violent, women-hating, dangerous criminal thugs. And instead of thanking them, we have politicians and all the other apologists condemning the police and saying sorry to the criminals. What on earth has gone wrong with this country? Tony adds this: here we go once again. It looks as if the spineless authorities are about to sacrifice one of our own coppers in order to pacify the mobs of people who started off these attacks, first on themselves and then on the police at the airport. We have an email here about the difficulty in getting to France, to Paris, for the Olympics. And Barry says this: have no fear. If you can't get to Paris via the Eurostar, or if you can't get to a flight, why don't you get yourself down to Dover and pick up a dinghy? and pick up a dinghy, because no doubt you'll be able to sail over the channel and maybe even get a lift from the Lifeboat Association. I see what you did there. Now, quickly moving on, a service remembering the sacrifice made by bombing crews during the Second World War has been held in Lincoln. 58,000 men and women died, both serving and supporting the most perilous role in the Air Force. GB News' East Midlands reporter Will Hollis has the story.
At the International Bomber Command Centre in Lincoln, a day dedicated to honouring its namesake. Roy Briggs risked everything flying in Bomber Command. Now aged 99, the wireless operator had one of the most dangerous jobs in the war, bombing Berlin.
I couldn't believe it, really. I thought, is this me, or am I dreaming that a 20-year-old boy from the back streets of Battersea was flying over Germany in a Lancaster? I've got 3 old-age pensioners looking after me.
Marking Bomber Command Day, Roy joins some of the last remaining veterans who flew the deadliest of missions. But toward the end of the war, dropping food, not bombs, became the task.
Before we took off, we heard that Mr. Churchill was going to make a statement in the Commons at 3:30. And we dropped food and we were on our way back. And I tuned into the BBC and I heard him say, tomorrow will be VE Day.
This is the 4th Bomber Command Day, created to preserve the memory of the people who served in the most perilous place, the sky. Some 58,000 people died serving with Bomber Command. Here at the centre, their names are included on memorial walls, the setting for a service remembering their role securing peace. Nikki Vanderdrift is Chief Executive.
We need to remember that all efforts should be made to protect peace and freedom, and every day those in the military are fighting that fight for us.
With members from 62 countries, the Allies fighting in Bomber Command took the war to the heart of Germany. Colonel Jonathan Bouchard is from the Canadian Air Force. This year, it commemorates 100 years of service.
The contribution that our people did standing next to allies and partners back then is to be remembered.
Nations once more coming together, not to defend, but to remember. Will Hollis, GB News in Lincoln.
Fantastic stuff. Now, for those of you hoping to see Bobby Davro, I'm afraid there was an internet gremlin at Chateau Davro, but we will endeavour to get the comedy legend on the show next week. I'm fascinated by the fact that he's appearing at the Edinburgh Fringe, an event I thought was just infested with lovies, thespians and tristrams, not the sort of place for a traditional British comedian like Bobby Davro. So it's magnificent to see that he's still putting the cat amongst the pigeons all of these years later. Look forward to that on Monday. Look, I hope you have a fantastic weekend. I've fabulously enjoyed this week. Thanks for all your company and your messages. It means a huge amount. Next is Tubes & Co, but now it's your weather with Alex Deacon. Have a fantastic weekend. Cheers.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Afternoon, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A mix of sun and showers today, but much of the south staying fine into this evening. A few livelier showers further north and west, weather fronts here and